help us all to return back to our home safely as we finish. Say that in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Stand and repeat the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, by way of roll call, let it be noted that 4 commissioners are present. Do we have any commissioners online? As stated, Commissioner Thomas and Commissioner Barker asked to be excused tonight. And Commissioner Arner, do we think she's going to show? We haven't heard.
I think I haven't heard anything.
Okay, so let it be noted that Commissioner Arner, Commissioner Barker, and Commissioner Thomas are not in attendance. We do have a quorum. Brings us to our first item to consider our minutes approval. I sent an email out this afternoon as I was reviewing the minutes, noted that there was a typo in one of the residents' names. I remember specifically that his name was Udell, and he was referenced in the attendance log as being Udell, and he was called Goodell throughout the minutes. So I asked for those changes to be made to staff, and I believe they were going to be made. I think it should be just a simple find and replace of the word Goodell with Udell. I think, and those would be the only changes that I noted.
Can we approve with that change? Then?
Absolutely, if you want to, yeah.
All right, then I'll make a motion that we approve the November 3rd, 2021 Planning Commission minutes with the changes noted by Commissioner Mason.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, voice vote?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, ex parte communications or conflicts of interest to disclose. It was also noted by Commissioner Thomas that one of the reasons he was not in attendance tonight is he does have some involvement, some loose involvement, I believe, in the one of the items that we'll be discussing tonight in the Village with Prominence Point development. So he's recused himself from that discussion and is not here in attendance. So I thought that was prudent and commend him for that. Any other ex parte communications, anything like that? Okay. Well, we jump right into it then. We're interested in hearing, oh, we forgot to read our opening meeting
Let
statement.
me go ahead and read the
Thank you.
opening meeting statement. Before each agenda item begins, city staff will give a report. After the staff report, the item will be opened for other speakers. The applicant will speak first and be allowed up to 10 minutes. Following the applicant, any other interested person will be allowed to speak for up to 3 minutes. The applicant has final rebuttal time of up to 5 minutes. Any materials that are displayed or referenced, such as pictures or written materials, are part of the record and must be left with the commission. Speakers are required to have signed in at the door and will state their name and address before beginning their remarks. If you agree with the previous speaker, then state your agreement to avoid repetitious remarks. Speakers shall address the commission from the podium or microphone and shall address all comments to the planning commission. Please silence your phone.
Thank you. And then for those on Zoom, same procedures apply. We just ask that you raise your hand or use the hand raise feature in Zoom, and we'll be called on you, or we will call on you, and you'll be elevated to a speaker position at that time. Before we do move on to item number 5, let it be noted that staff has requested a little bit of a change to our agenda. We had item number 6 as part of the consent agenda, which, as we all know, gets less discussion and less presentation than, for example, an administrative item. So staff has asked that we move item number 6 from the consent agenda to be the first item of the administrative items. So in order to make that a change, we'd like a vote on that. Someone would like to?
You need a motion? Or
please, yeah.
I'd like to make a motion that we move item number 6 from the consent agenda to the administrative items agenda.
So one clarification, it's still a legislative item, but it would be the first item on the agenda. The item itself is legislative.
Okay.
Okay, let me rephrase that. Move item number 6 from the consent agenda to the next item, and it'll be a legislative item.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion to second. Voice vote. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that item will move to a legislative item and be the first item for discussion. Okay, as stated in our opening meeting statement, we're interested in hearing public comments If anyone has any, that would be the time for it now. If those comments are directed to a specific item on the agenda, we'd ask that you hold those for that specific topic and you'll have an opportunity to speak then. But if there was any other general comments, now would be the time to address the planning commission.
Cody Schaefer, address 2638 North, 700 East. We just have some concerns about the development that's going behind our properties. So right now, and we're told when they started the development, that's just up 2600 and like the new Monroe or whatever it is.
Mhm.
We're told that they weren't gonna be raising the elevation. Right now, it's probably about 4 or 5 feet above our property elevation. And we're just concerned that, one, I mean, the look of is gonna detract from, our property. But our main concern is runoff and, if they're gonna put a retaining wall, they're gonna put, we're told, if the mud comes down, the water comes down, then they'll have to put a retaining wall, but I don't know that that's actually in the plans. And we've requested a set of plans, but those were never sent by email.
So, and this development's where again?
So if you go up 2600, just past 700 East, it's probably gonna be like 750 that you turn in where the old barn used to be.
Oh, yeah. Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
And
all the houses are on the west side. So we're on 700, and so there'll be the properties that are on our backside.
you're downhill from,
We're downhill. We were told they weren't gonna raise the elevation. They were just gonna keep it kind of the same as, it does raise maybe a foot or so from like the middle of our property to the back. So there is, elevation change, but it's definitely not like the 4 feet, like right at the property line, it just goes up to.
So this is due north of your property, right? I think
This
there's
is,
two
no,
developments
this
in
is
there.
due east.
Due east of your property. Okay.
So we're on 700. And so you're 26, 35, and we're 2638.
The developer has actually raised it by putting fill dirt in.
Right, and so, and that filter was never put in place until they started digging for the footings and foundation for the houses that are on the east side of the new Monroe, whatever, I don't know if that's Monroe or not, but.
Is
they
it,
started
is it,
moving
is
all
it
that
fill
dirt.
dirt or is it temporary dirt?
Well, that's a good question. It's fill dirt because I mean, at first they just brought the dirt over and it was in mounds, right? And then they started just leveling it out all the way across. So with that, maybe concerned that maybe that wasn't in the plans and the developer is trying to get away with something. I'm not sure. So I came down to look at the plans and I was never able to.
yeah, so we wouldn't have the plans with us tonight
Right,
in
of
this
course.
meeting. And I can give you my citizens' interpretation of this. And now I'm on the planning commission, but I'm not in the building industry. I'm not an engineer. So take this for what it's worth, please. But I've been in this chair long enough to have heard a number of concerns like this from property owners. And the answer that is usually provided by the engineers and which I trust has been that development actually, when you talk about water runoff, generally helps the neighboring properties and not hurts it from the engineering that's done. I've heard a number of comments like this from people usually from to the south because of how our city's laid out that have been downhill from a new development and coming here with concerns very much like that. And I've never heard from them again once the development's gone in. Now, I'm not a scientist, I'm not a developer. I can't promise that's your case. I just hope you have a little bit of peace of mind
And
from
I'd
that.
be okay with that, like, as long as there was something in the plan saying, hey, if there was some issue, because I do understand that the city's trying to take care of both, right? They're trying to take care of the developer, they're trying to take care of the original, property owner, or whatever they're adjacent to it. I understand they're trying to just make it good for both sides, but if there was something in the clause saying that, hey, if there is an issue that we're gonna put a retaining wall or we're gonna put a French drain, without like really going into the court system, I'd appreciate that, something.
Well, we obviously wouldn't have that where it was an agenda, not an agenda item tonight. We wouldn't have any of that information in front of us. I would think I would direct you to city staff, maybe a phone call to the city staff throughout the week.
So I think you stopped by my office maybe
Right.
6 weeks ago.
Yeah,
I thought we referred you to Lauren, if that's it.
right, so I've made a couple phone calls, I know Chuck's made a couple phone calls, have you gotten a hold of him?
So,
No, basically what I've been told is it sucks to be you. And which is not a very good answer to me.
okay, so just to be clear, Lauren's here with us in the meeting tonight. So, but we're happy to discuss it again with you. I'm available almost anytime. I know Lauren is,
I was on the planning commission for Eden for quite a while, and we treated our people a lot better than the way I feel I have been treated with this.
So if you'd like to address that to the plan commission, you'll have opportunity after he speaks, and we'd be interested in hearing from you.
So if this, is it Lauren? Yes. Do you know if, just off the top of your head, if that elevation is supposed to be raised, or do you think that's the developer trying to just get away with something that wasn't passed by the state?
When they excavated those berms or mounds of dirt were higher than what it finally will be. But the house that's going in on that lot is at or just barely above the curb on Monroe. And so this is his backyard. It's almost a flat lot and then it drops down.
So it's gonna basically stay where it's at.
And we've told you that the plan has them building a ditch that's supposed to gather any water off that back slope and take it away, so,
Okay, so that wasn't, I was never involved in
yeah.
that
And
conversation.
that's part of
So
the,
is that, I mean, when are they gonna put that in place? 'Cause-
that's required before they get occupancy on the building.
okay, so is it the homeowners that are having to do that, or is it the developer before they get C of O? Or before they get their.
The C of O is related to the homeowner.
Right, but I'm just saying, so before the developer can sign off, before they get their bond with the city, when is, like, I just wanna know when they're gonna be putting that in, because I just see that being something that's really
That's something that
easily
the
fallen by the
building
wayside.
inspector would check
Okay.
on as part of the C of
Okay.
O, to make sure that all those site improvements are accomplished. So,
How are we supposed to have a 6-foot privacy fence when we have 4 feet of dirt up in our backyard neighbors? So we have a 2-foot fence? Do you know what I'm saying?
So,
Sorry.
yeah,
doesn't
thank you for your
matter.
comments. So,
Okay.
so in the interest of some decorum, and I'd say this to everyone, so don't feel picked on over this, but please direct your comments to the planning commission, not to other members of the audience. And that helps basic, fighting and stuff. Breaking. Not that that's going to happen here. Okay. And I'm not accusing you of that, but please direct your comments here. We may direct you to city staff in the future and we'll answer what we can, but we may not know everything about your specific development. Okay. So we're listening for
Okay,
sure.
Yes,
Okay.
my name's Elisa Schaefer, 2638 West 700 East. We finally just bought our first house. And in the backyard, we have at least 4 feet now difference. It was not there when we purchased the house. I understand developments happen. I understand we have to make developers and residents happy. I am worried. I have little kids, and I would really prefer when I put in my pool that my backyard neighbors that were supposed to be basically level, if I put in a 6-foot fence, how is that going to protect any privacy in my backyard? It really, you can't unless the developer is maybe held responsible to put in a retaining wall for that 4 feet and then maybe a fence on our new neighbor's backyard that would be 6 feet tall. That would give us some privacy. And it would also give them some privacy. So I'm really just, we live in North Ogden. We've been here for 20 years. We just bought our first home in North Ogden. And I really just think that we need to make sure that it is fair to everyone. I understand developers need to be not have too many regulations because it needs to be affordable. Otherwise, we wouldn't have any new homes. I understand that. But also, I'm a teacher. I make no money. We live on a very tight budget, as I'm aware of my neighbor is on a very tight budget. So I can't afford, if there is an issue, I can't afford to go put in a big retaining wall that when I purchased the home did not need to be there. So I just don't know who we talk to because we have called and we've been in here several times and we've made phone calls and we're not making any headway. So, and I have 2 weeks off from school. So I'm trying to get things done right now. Because once school starts back up again, I have no free time at all. So I just would, if there's anyone we can talk to instead of just say call the staff, because we have done that. And we feel like we're kind of getting the runaround. And we've lived here, like I said, 20 years, pay taxes, responsible landowner, like we, and I do think that we need maybe something else, someone else who can actually answer our questions. So I'm just not sure if you guys know who that person is.
Well, I think city staff is your best. I know it's not the answer you want, but our
So city staff entails who, because we have been in here.
well,
So
so
who do we
the city
talk
staff
to?
is going to follow the ordinances that are laid down recommended by the planning commission, enacted by the city council, right? And if the development in your neighborhood meets those ordinances, then the city staff is probably going to have to give you some answers that you don't like. That's that's my impression. Okay, because there's just no legislative teeth to change anything like that. And I live in an area where my neighbors above me are looking down. As a matter of fact, I complain about it in here all the time, because what I have now is a parking lot above me, and those headlights come right in my backyard.
Yeah.
And I understand the situation you're in, because that fence can't be any higher than 6 feet,
In my property,
and it's raised up from there. And I believe the definition of a fence starts from the ground. I think, is that not right? So not from what your neighbor's perception is, but I believe your 6 feet is from the ground where the fence is installed. So
unless
I can only tell you
could
what's
install
in the legislation, and staff can only act on what's in the legislation. I mean, they're not going to be able to go and do anything, even though if it's poorly legislated, if it's something we've missed. This is why we're interested in hearing from you, because there are things that we miss, and sometimes we think, oh, maybe that would be a good idea. But if it's not in there, I don't know how that developer is going to be held to that standard for you.
Okay.
And so that's why I suggest you call staff and say, hey, what is in the ordinance?
And
then you can find
who
those
is that?
things.
So staff, is that
That'll be the planning department.
the planning department? Have we already talked to the planning department? Okay. And so
Yeah.
we did ask those questions, and we did not actually find out anything.
Well, it's very likely that development, and I don't know, it's not in front of me. It's very likely that development fits the ordinances. And that's
We
that.
did request a copy if it was feasible to have a copy of it.
Well, the ordinances are definitely available for the residents. They're the ordinances that govern us all, you and me and my neighbor and your neighbor.
Well, and we were also
And-
asking for the seat plans. I mean, we should be able to, as long as it doesn't have any private information on it.
I don't know about that. I don't know the answer to that question,
Okay,
unfortunately.
so we just need to get back in touch with
Mr. Bell.
Mr.
Be your best friend.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And, just in staff's defense, I've worked with them a lot, and they really are really, really good.
I know
and really,
everyone's busy. I
yeah,
do
no.
understand.
I mean, they're really competent and they really care. Also, I mean, I know that maybe not what you're feeling in your situation, but having worked with them enough, and I'm just a resident too. I don't get anything by saying this. I really feel that the city staff has people's best interests in at heart, and they're balancing a lot of different competing things, as you've mentioned, your new neighbors, interests and stuff. And so they're in a tough spot, but all you can do is request for the ordinances and then see if they're being met. And
Okay,
if not, then
then we bring it back up again.
something has to happen. Yeah.
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, we just didn't know where to go because we kind of been through it and we just were like, okay, we're not getting anywhere. So,
That's my direct number, and then
Okay.
Lauren's number is on there as well.
okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jones Bright, 2634 north, 700 east. I have the exact same problem. I don't know, it was as high at one time, it's now about anywhere from 5 to 8 feet higher than my property. At one time, it was up to 12 to 15 feet higher. They've leveled it off a little, but we were told that they would be at the same level that we were at. And I don't understand why they need to raise the elevation of the property. If someone can explain to me, yes, we're doing it and we're doing it for these reasons, that's fine. But so far, everyone I've asked, no one can seem to answer the question. No one seems to know on the property itself who's running that thing. I can't find who the big boss is. You know, I even called the Wright Lumber because their name is on the sign, but they don't seem to know anything either. So basically, I'm looking for the same thing that they are, just answers. And give us some reasonable answers to our questions and why they're doing what they're doing. I don't see the sense in it. Why can't it be at the same level that it was at the beginning of the property? They have been moving dirt for 2 years. And now I just have a feeling that instead of paying to have that dirt shipped off someplace, they decided, well, we'll just raise the level of the land here for us to store the dirt in. That's all I've got to say. Any help that you guys can give, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
All I know is that the time that I was on a planning commission, we talked to the neighbors of everything, and we tried to keep everybody happy.
I commend you because that's a difficult job.
Well, I know.
Yeah.
You know, we had a big fishing thing going in there up at the reservoir, and that the towns turned out like crazy and turned that thing down flat. But, you know.
Yeah. Well, thank you. We noted your comments. We've noted your frustrations. Again, that's not an agenda item for us tonight. And my advice remains the same. I don't know if any other commissioners had anything different, but would be to work to call city staff, and they'll be your best point of contact for that.
Well, the
So-
only reason we're here is I spoke to Del Pass, who's on the commission now, and he told me the time and to come here to talk to you.
Well, your comments have been put on public record. They're also, there's a YouTube feed that I'm surprised at the number of residents that watch. These have been noted. Yeah, I don't think your time here was in vain. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for your
Yep,
comments.
thank you. You have further public comments, maybe from somebody online?
Would you have a raised hand from Stephanie Casey?
Okay.
Stephanie Casey, a North Ogden resident. Just hearing these other residents bring up this concern, it's something I would love to see put on the agenda and discussed further.
Ms. Casey, can I pause you real quick because the commented started to walk out. I'm going to, since you're referencing him, I'm going to ask him to pay attention here for a second. We have
Okay.
another public comment related to this. Thank you.
Yeah, I just think this is a really important subject that probably should be addressed quickly. I know that there's a recent development that just finished within the last couple of years that was put behind Barker Park, specifically Melanie and Rod Barker's residence, and that home starts where their roof is. And those new neighbors can look into their home as well as their backyard. And so addressing this before it gets to that point would be great. Sadly, our street is a little bit gun shy in bringing up issues. And it's a problem, and I feel really bad that that has happened to them. I know that Utah State has a Private Property Protection Act. I started going through it, but I didn't have quite enough time. But I think that there are some things that really need to be looked at and addressed in making sure that our residents, that their private property, especially their backyards, are protected. They have that right. I believe we all have the right to privacy under certain circumstances. And so I just think that we need to, I think it's worth looking at again, and certainly looking at what that entails and making sure that we're doing everything we can in our code to protect people's right to privacy.
Noted. Thank you very much.
Anyway, thank you.
Again, my personal comments on this would be the city would be much easier to legislate if it was flat as a pancake and divided up into nice sections of ground that were all square. And, I suffer with the same thing. We live on a hill, and people can gawk right down into my house all the time. So
I would have no objection if we were living on the side of the mountain. on the side
It
behind me,
was almost level.
But it was absolutely
Yeah.
level. before.
understood. So-
And this changed the whole thing.
Understood. And if there are word legislation that could fix this, we'd be interested in entertaining that, certainly. I haven't given it enough thought to come up with that right now, but that's something, as Ms. Casey suggested, that could be considered and something we could look at. So best of luck to you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, do we have any further comments? Okay, looks like we do not have any other comments. That brings us right into our legislative item. That would be number 6. Now, the one point of order, we have Scott Hess as a presenter, and I don't see him in the meeting. Brandon, are you going to be presenting all the items tonight?
I'm going to be presenting the legislative item. Our planning director is here with us online.
Okay, sounds like a deal. So Brandon Bell will have item number 6, consideration and action regarding annexing property located approximately 1500 north and 150 east. Moving into the R4 zone is the consideration. Thank you.
Chair and members of the commission. So one clarification on this item, it states to zone the property R4. This is actually just a recommendation as opposed to a final decision, as that's the purview of the city council for the final decision. I'll go ahead and read a couple of details. It's this project area for this proposed annexation is just over 11 acres. It's currently in the county and with the A1 zone. And the proposed zone is the multifamily residential R4 zone. It's at approximately 1500 north and 150 east. I'll go ahead and read the legislative decision statement. When the city is considering a legislative matter, the planning commission is acting as a recommending body to the city council. The city has wide discretion in taking legislative action. Examples of legislative actions are general plan, zoning map, and land use text amendments. Legislative actions require that the planning commission give a recommendation to the city council, and typically the criteria for making a decision related to a legislative matter require compatibility with the general plan and the existing codes. The applicant has applied to annex 11.114 acres. The property is currently vacant. It may be an agricultural use, but it doesn't have any development on it, and is adjacent to the Spring Meadows subdivision, which is, sorry, that says just east. It's actually, the Spring Meadows is just to the west of it. Again, the request is for the R4 zone, and the applicant plans to develop the property as residential, is my understanding. There are adjacent properties that are again in the A1 zone, but there's also property to the south and again in the county that is in the county's RE15 zone. The properties to the west, which include but are not limited to the Spring Meadows subdivision, are in North Arden City in our zone R18. The property is within the city's annexation boundary, and it's within the annexation area. So the general plan calls for this area to be annexed into North Ogden City. The property is to the west and south of the Southtown area within the general plan and future land use map. The currently adopted general plan map calls for this property to be developed as residential low density, which is defined as single family homes built on lots with 8,000 square feet and larger, with densities in the range of 1 to 6 units per acre. However, I'll address that land use map a little bit more in a minute. The R4 zone that's being requested by the applicant is more intense than falls within the current land use category of residential low density. However, the Planning Commission has recommended an updated draft future land use map that was prepared by the General Plan Advisory Committee in concert with staff. The City Council was briefed last night on that updated draft future land use map. However, no action was taken on that. It was essentially a briefing and an introduction to it. I understand that they will be discussing that further, probably by late January or early February at the latest, is what they stated last night. The parcel that is being proposed for annexation is identified as part of Area 6 on the draft future land use map, which contemplates a mix of uses, including multifamily, R4, commercial, C2, and master planned community
But
NPC.
Brandon, is it entirely in number 6 or does it reach into number 6?
From what I understand, it's the entire property is, unless I've got this wrong, it's in all within Area 6.
Okay, thanks.
So the recommendation for Area 6 in the updated draft land use map may be translated as recommending that the C2, R4, and or the MPC zones are suitable zones for that area. As of now, the requested R4 zoning meets the zoning that is consistent with the draft land use map that's been recommended. So it's, the R4 is higher than the current land use map, but it's in concert and consistent with the updated draft land use map. Just some commentary about this property. The North Ogden City is in the rare position of having significant developable land near and close to a major transportation corridor and near the commercial corridor. The Southtown area is a key growth opportunity area for the city and a substantial opportunity to provide housing choice and affordability within North Ogden. Planning staff's position is that the R4 zone is an appropriate zone for this property with some firm conditions and requirements. Staff recommends that substantial amenities should be provided and a transition and density be required from the single family subdivision to the west, which is again Spring Meadows as part of annexation and the assignment of the R4 zone. Various types of open space and other meaningful amenities could be included, and staff is in support of additional density and housing choice in this area of the city if the above conditions are fulfilled. Since annexation is needed for developing this property within the city, requiring this property to be part of the annexation process, requiring those conditions to be part of the annexation process would be appropriate. And those conditions could be specified as part of a development agreement and should be central to any such agreement. Staff is also of the opinion that the streets should be designed on this property in such a manner that they create and preserve a connection to the townhomes to the east and provide for other future connections. Keeping in mind that this area is currently being recommended to be a key opportunity for housing choice, multifamily, commercial, and or the MPC zone, walkability should be a key concern. Were 1700 North or the 2000 North area to become a destination in the city without street connection to the east, currently it would be a 20-minute walk to 1700 North and Washington Boulevard and about a 25-minute walk to 2000 North and Washington Boulevard. So requiring the street network to facilitate a direct connection to the townhomes to the east, which connect to Washington Boulevard, staff believes should be a requirement. And then staff also believes that that should be a requirement independent of the future development of Washington Boulevard along 2000 and 1700 North, and also that additional street connections should be provided for to facilitate directly connecting to 1700 North to the north of the property. So one into the north street, facilitating street connection, and one to the east to Washington Boulevard. Requiring that these connections could be facilitated and could be required as part of a development agreement. When I say facilitated, what I'm really saying is that the streets on the property should head in a direction towards the edge of the property so that the next development that join the next property over can extend that street until it reaches to Washington or 1700. The point being that the design would not preclude it. They can't, they wouldn't be required to extend it because it's not their property, but design should be such that it enables that to happen. When that
Question about that. So those condos to to the east that you referenced, I think they're on 1500 North. Are they technically Harrisville City?
I believe they are.
I believe they are too. And I wonder if traffic is even conducive to that neighborhood. I mean, I do not like the way that neighborhood was laid out, not at all. And I wonder if traffic should really be funneled onto that. Where
Which neighborhood, the townhomes or the?
the townhomes on 1500 North, it seems like a logical connection to Washington Boulevard. And I see where you're coming from, but the homes that are along there, it's a narrow street and it's absolutely lined with townhomes on both sides of the street. And I do wonder how much traffic should really flow through there.
I agree with that.
Like,
I agree with that.
yeah, so where when we make those recommendations, I personally don't think we should really strong arm some connection there. I don't know.
So another option that you have is to consider it or to look at, other ways of providing some form of street connectivity. But that's part of your decision-making process as a recommendation.
Do you think it's premature to address this area before that proposed land use map is approved?
That's what I'm talking about. Like,
Yeah.
do we
Or I
really
don't
wanna-
know if you had a
No, we don't.
sense of
We
the
don't.
city council's thoughts on that, whether they would be opposed, whether they're gonna embrace it or not embrace, you know what I mean? I don't know. I kind of feel maybe are we jumping the gun to look at this property to meet with this plan that's not really approved yet? But don't
I
have
so
a
agree with
sense of
that.
Where we are.
I so agree with that.
Yeah.
I don't feel
I do
like,
too.
we're not at the
I almost
discussion
feel like we're
part yet,
like
but
putting the cart before the horse in a way.
So one struggle that with that property that comes into play is the fact that if it's in our annexation declaration and they apply for annexation, then we need to assign them a zone.
Mhm.
So we
Okay.
don't have a way to tell it. I know it sounds funny. We could say, you're asking for R4, we'll give you RE20. Like that's what we're comfortable with at this point. And then they have the option of saying, yes, we'll proceed forward or not. But we don't have the option of saying, we won't take you into the city
Okay,
unless we're saying we won't give you the zone that you want. And I know it's a nuance, but
okay,
basically we've kind of promised the state and the county by declaring this as part of our annexation boundaries that we'll take property, but it has to come in under our terms, but also under the property owner's terms. It's kind of a balancing.
So we would have the option, for example, of since staff is recommending a buffer between these R18 houses to say, well, since it's touching R18, we'll annex it in at R18. Is that right?
So, and the landowner still has the option to say, okay, wait, I don't want that zone, so I'm gonna pull my application at this time.
does that conclude your presentation, Brandon?
I think I'm just seeing if I read it earlier that the general plan, the current general plan calls for it to be R18, correct? 8,000 square feet.
Yes,
So it calls for it to be R18. We're only looking at R4 now because that's what the new plan calls for and what the applicant is requesting.
that's
correct?
correct.
So if we looked at annexation tonight and R18, which is currently what the general plan calls for, then we would just have to look at it again after perhaps this new proposed land use map is approved or?
Yeah, I mean.
Well, I think they'd have to apply for,
As R18, or John can weigh in on this, but, or that it be reconsidered, after the, that it could be reconsidered after the draft land use map is approved.
Because the R18 would put it as single family homes, less traffic,
mhm.
maybe addressing some of those concerns you mentioned.
So I don't want to get too far into our discussion items without having,
Okay.
since that's supposed to be we're supposed to hear from the applicant first and let Brandon conclude. I don't know if we've cut you off there.
I'll just read staff's recommendation. Staff recommends that the planning commission recommend the city council annex this property and apply the R4 zone with the conditions that a development agreement be provided that includes a requirement for significant amenities and a transition in density from surrounding development, and that street connections be carefully considered, including a requirement to facilitate a direct connection to the townhomes to the east and other connections provided forward to the north of the property. So,
Thank you. Okay, is our applicant here tonight? Would you like to address us? You got a sneak peek at some of our concerns.
My name is Dan Birch. I reside at 1091 North, 2675 West in Layton. I'm representing my employer, which is Wall Brothers Construction, and appreciate the discussion. You know, that's why we have these meetings. And speaking with staff prior to submitting our application, Scott brought up some of the, I know obviously, I guess kind of everything that I'm going to talk about has been the discussion of where the future, you know, Scott brought up the future land use map, you know, and so I understand what it currently is recommending for the zone. But again, just kind of looking ahead, that's why we've kind of requested that zone. So Scott also brought up that buffer zone. And we are totally open to working with the city. You know, I mean, obviously, we're not trying to, you know, strong arm anything. Before the discussion of the concern to connect to the east, we were kind of discussing the connection to the north as well as to the east there through those townhomes. And what Scott was kind of recommending, and just in our discussion, it's not that we've taken anything as approval or entitlement, but having that single family maintained down at the southern portion of the property to kind of maintain that flow from the southwest property that's existing, which are the single family homes, and then have kind of more of the density up above. There was discussion of that the city would probably request open space, which we are very open to discussing and would love to provide that. And it kind of, that's kind of a good trade-off too, in a way with some of the development that we're considering or that we would be interested in providing that open space where the school's going to be right there. It's not really going to be considered open space for public, you know, especially during school hours and everything. And so to be able to provide open space like parks and everything for not only the residents, but just the community in the area. And then to kind of, I guess, look at the density up north. So to kind of have that buffer and honor that, you know, that request that was brought up and something that seems to be kind of important, which we respect. So that was kind of our discussion. And so as we don't have any, you know, preliminary drawings or anything at this point. Our engineers kind of drawing up some sketches, but that's been something that we've given to our engineers to consider and as they, you know, provide some ideas as far as a potential layout. So I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any, or if there's anything else you'd like me to.
So is the open space only available if you get the density that you're asking for the R4?
I don't know that. I mean, we did request R4 with a PUD overlay, which again, just in speaking with Scott, he seemed to think that was an okay thing to request. And I get that this is up to you and the city council, but that was just kind of our preliminary discussion. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know if that's a homeowners association and then a park that's exclusively to, well, we're open to that. You know, I mean, if it's a request from the city to work with us to provide, you know, public, we're open to that, you know. Absolutely. I'll be honest, I'm pretty new at this still. This is my first year in development. And so I just kind of deflect and say, I'd be happy to talk with my employers and we're open to that. You know what I mean? So.
Okay. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm a computer programmer. I know nothing about
Okay.
this. So relax. Like, yeah. Okay. Thank you for your comments, sir.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Do you have any other public that would like to comment on this?
Raylan Hightower, North Ogden resident. I wasn't planning on that, but commenting on this. High density is way overrated. High density housing, you're just asking for more crime, more congestion, more traffic. And I know that North Ogden is supposed to be this farm town, and it's definitely not looking like it anymore. And I would hate to see any more high density housing go in. It'd be nice to have the low density, nice neighborhoods. That's my opinion. The high density, I think, is getting a lot more activity in the city than I feel it should have. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a comment online?
No, I have a question or comment.
Okay.
So one of the things that the new general plan is going to be looking at is defining what density means in North Ogden. And I'm just a suggestion for the planning is whenever someone makes a comment, mentions a density, low, high, it might be helpful for you as a group to understand what they mean is high density 40 units to the acre or 6 units to the acre, because everyone says a little different. And I think based on what Corlin was saying, that her focus is on apartments, which is typically 18 units to the acre or more, sometimes as low as 14 though. But it could include townhomes. And so just trying to understand that will, I think, help you get a feel.
Thanks. It's complex. You also have clustering that happens, right? So you can throw 4 homes real close together. And if there is open space out there, then that, your overall impact to the land is maybe, not quite as what it would seem, but.
Well, into the residents' comments, this farm town feel, and how do we balance that with the need for more housing? I have a couple of acres. I like that. I want to continue that, but I also understand that in order to have that, we might need to have some houses, this clustering comment, some houses that are closer together with maybe some open space in between or something, get creative. So it's hard. It's really hard.
Thank you. Do you have any other comments? Nobody online, John?
No, nothing online yet.
Okay, let's close the public comments for this item and move into our discussion. Commissioner and Carol, I struggle myself with trying to legislate something that doesn't exist, right? Maybe I should reserve this for the end, but I feel like we told these people here, hey, we have to follow the ordinances as they're written. And then to move on to the very next item and say, well, we're going to talk about an ordinance that will probably be coming because we think it will be coming, seems disingenuous, and I'm largely of the opinion that we should follow our ordinances. I absolutely in favor of annexing this property. I struggle where we have to assign it a zone because I know I'm over talking here and I should allow you guys to talk first, but I feel like we have a developer here that seems great and seems like he's willing to work with us, but what if he walks away from the property and the zoning stays, or just because he's a great developer, does that zone really apply? Is that honorable of us to legislate for something that doesn't quite exist? So I'll let you guys chime in with your comments.
The only, I guess, other side of the comments I made earlier, the other thing in my mind is, well, we, the planning commission, have made a recommendation to the city council to adopt this new land use map. It's in their court now, right? What we would do tonight.
I don't know if I agree with that. I think we were presented it. I don't think we made a recommendation, did we? Or did we?
I think we made a positive
Did we?
recommendation to adopt.
Okay, sorry, excuse me.
No, that's
Yep.
okay. And so I guess we've put that in their hands to make a decision. This decision tonight, what we would be doing is making a recommendation to the city council. So, I guess at some point they would have to decide whether it's all going to fall in there. But I almost feel like, hey, this is not in place yet. Annexation, I think, is not even a question. I think we would all probably support annexing that property, but the appropriate zoning is really the only question for me.
Yeah, the timing of it's really tricky
It is.
because it does seem like the developer has listened to staff, wants to create buffers that, in this kind of transitional area where you have some R18 property, they want to create some potential open space so that it is in keeping with what North Ogden residents have said they want. Yet we need to annex something, it sounds like, potentially tonight, and we would be annexing it. They're asking for a zone that doesn't currently apply. It may apply, but it doesn't. And that puts us in a really tricky situation.
Just to clarify, we're going to make a recommendation to the city council for both annexation and assigning to the zone.
Mhm.
We don't have the ability to do that tonight. So we're recommending. Body.
Correct, yes. Thank you.
But the question is, what zone would we recommend?
That's the tricky point to me.
And
Yeah, Commissioner Lund, do you have any thoughts on this? Put you on the spot.
I don't know that I have any that are outside of what we're all talking about. I think everybody's kind of in agreement in a sense that we don't. I don't know if we have the ability or whether we should make a recommendation for something that isn't in our master plan as currently written.
That's
Now,
my take.
We could make a motion tonight or make a recommendation tonight to annex a property and assign a R18. Then down the road and hopefully the very near future, when that land use map is adopted, they could request to change the zoning, correct?
They could.
Either that or they just wait and pull their application and do it then.
Scott has a comment.
Online?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Scott, would you like to address this?
Yeah, thank you, members of the Planning Commission and applicants and staff. So I did have a handful of conversations leading up to this annexation request. And my advice was largely go this direction because we had the General Plan Advisory Committee who had made a unanimous recommendation for positive approval on that area 6 down there, the Southtown area of the city. In the discussions with the Planning Commission on the general plan, we have many areas of transition in the city, this being one of them, but this being one that doesn't seem contested in the same way as, say, what happens immediately surrounding downtown and Old Town, where you have this immediate, seeming conflict between new multifamily and old, long-time existing agricultural properties that have been in North Ogden City, not areas of the unincorporated county. So I felt like we were trying to strike a balance as staff of, we know we need a stepping down or a transitioning of density from the existing brand new single family homes into what will be multifamily. But, from staff's perspective, the Planning Commission has a positive recommendation to council. So in effect, you have already told council, our legislators, this area of the city is ripe for and or slated for, or in our vision has multifamily. And R4, given, on a piece of property with 0 constraints, will be somewhere in the 12 to 14 units per acre. So it's high density in regards to the zoning districts that we have that run from Hillside Protection 3 at 2 acres to RE20 to our single family zones up to multifamily. But in the scheme of things, Village at Prominence Point is, I think, 40 units per acre or something like that on the average across the site. So it's, a quarter of the density or a third of the density of that. And it would have some transition across the site. So perhaps I led the applicant wrong. I feel bad if that's the case, but I felt like we were kind of marching down a road of the Planning Commission feeling confident that Southtown area of the city is an area where we'll provide additional housing choice and some multifamily opportunities, and to have a developer that's willing to, sign a development agreement or come in under a PRUD with some self-limiting terms that require these open space and transition, really feels like an opportunity for a win-win and isn't just like a carte blanche R4 zoning on the piece of property. So that's just a bit of perspective from staff, and I guess my reasoning for providing the advice that I did.
Thank you. Yeah, in no way do I think this was any disingenuous of anyone to recommend this. I do struggle with, do we want to be the Planning Commission who deviates from the actual general plan? Yeah. Do we want to be that Planning Commission?
I don't think any of us are saying we disagree with even an R4 zone.
Yeah.
It's just
not in
it's not
accordance
what's in
with.
accordance with our
And,
master plan.
and then the opportunity cost here of losing an opportunity to enter into a development agreement. I mean, those development agreements are cool. They get us things, amenities that we probably wouldn't otherwise get on just the open market. If the developer is willing to, whatever,
Work with them.
put in a water slide or whatever, that has, then that is a win for the city. So I don't want to completely ignore that.
And who
I do struggle.
who enforces that actually happens? Is it staff? Is it?
Well, that's my struggle.
Who
Is
makes sure that happens?
That's my struggle. Is, let's say this, we recommend this goes through and it becomes annexed piece of property to the city that is now an R4, and then the developer walks away for whatever reason.
Sells it.
Okay, yeah, for whatever reason has to walk away. Then now we have R4, and then I feel like somebody could slide in and build R4,
Apartments.
yeah, without that agreement. And then I believe that could happen. I could be wrong.
Well, the only difference there is that the development agreement, I believe, transfers with the property, does not, or is it only with the developer?
No, it would be with the property, and since it's part of annexation, you can require that development agreement, it's not just a typical zone assignment. You can add additional conditions because it's not within the city.
Mm.
And so the development agreement could be a set of conditions that are, required as part of common apartments.
Well, that actually, knowing that would be
The
binding,
conditions.
actually changes my opinion.
Yeah.
I like that.
I'm gonna go ahead and make a motion.
Please do.
That we make a recommendation to the city council to annex this property and apply the R4 zone, with the condition that a development agreement be provided that includes the requirement for significant amenities and a transition in density from surrounding development, and the street connections be carefully considered, including a requirement to facilitate a direct connection to the townhomes to the east and other connections provided to the north of the property. It does include those conditions for a development agreement. So I think after all of our discussion, I would have to agree with staff's recommendation.
Okay, we have a motion. Be looking for a second.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion. So once we get a motion, that's great. It gives us more talking points. Okay. Is there further discussion? We have kind of beat it up. I think we're all sort of thinking the same stuff and have the same concerns. I honestly don't know which way I'm going to vote right now.
Yeah, and you know what? I won't be offended either way. I'm going
Do we have further discussion on that? Okay, in absence of further discussion, I call for a vote. Commissioner Lunt, how do you vote on the motion?
Yes.
Commissioner Webb,
Yes.
Commissioner Nancaro?
Yes.
I vote no. And for the reason, I love the way that was drafted, and philosophically, I agree with the land use in that way. I vote no simply because it doesn't meet with the current general plan as stated, and I don't want to draft towards something that's unapproved. So that's my only reason. Understanding full well that we have recommended that change ourselves. So
You know what? I'm not mad or offended by that in any way, because I'm on the fence, but I think we need to at least do an annex. So if somebody else wants to make another motion
that
with
motion
a
is passed.
different zone,
So
it didn't pass. I don't
it
think
did
we have
pass.
a
It wasn't
quorum.
unanimous. We have
3-1.
3 to 1
Oh,
that
okay. I
passes.
thought we needed 4 for.
No, that motion passes. So the only way to change that at this point would be for you to ask for another vote. So the motion is passed.
Okay.
And I
I'm
think
good
we're all
with
at
that.
peace
I
with
thought
that.
we needed 4 for us to.
That was the ugliest approval you've ever got in your young career.
I thought we needed 4
Okay, we're gonna take a 5-second break, right? Well,
for 5 seconds.
okay, yeah, we're gonna allow for a quick break right now for about a minute and a half, 2 minutes. Thanks. let's reconvene and move on to our more technical part of the agenda here, I believe, which are our administrative items. I believe they're all related to the Village of Prominence Point and will all be presented by Scott Hess, our planning director, who's online. And so we'll let you move into number 7, Scott.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much. Yes, these are all related. Apologize to the Planning Commission for your 191 page packet. I hope that you didn't open that and feel extremely overwhelmed. The information does all kind of stack on itself, and hopefully it made sense with the 2017 development agreement, which in this particular case is really your zoning code to review against these submittals. And staff spent significant time in that development agreement and attempting to balance what the submittals are from an intent in the development agreement to just specifically laying out these are changes that staff sees. So we will begin with the administrative item for the clubhouse, Village at Prominence Point Clubhouse. This is located approximately 1850 North, 300 East. The parcel with the clubhouse is 0.427 acres, and there's a current parcel that is subject to change via a submitted subdivision plat that would be a 1-lot subdivision plat, the size of the clubhouse parcel itself as shown on the drawings, that would be completed after this planning commission meeting. Those are still in the queue for staff to complete. This type of decision, the planning commission is acting in an administrative capacity. You are acting as the land use authority. You have limited discretion. Examples of administrative applications are conditional use permits, design reviews, and subdivisions. Administrative applications must be approved by the planning commission if the application demonstrates compliance with the approval criteria. So in the
Scott,
case,
can I interrupt you there? I wonder how it's an administrative decision when there's been isn't this all subject to a development agreement?
It is, but so what you're basically doing is you are administering the development agreement in the same way that you would be administering the zoning code.
Thank you.
So the development in this case, you have an MPC zone, master plan community zone, and a development agreement which specifies the approval process. So the clubhouse is related to the apartment project, and it states that for the apartment project, the development agreement states that landscaping plans and signage are to be approved by the planning commission. All buildings in the apartment area need to meet the original development agreements Exhibit B and the elevations in Exhibit E. Colors should match the color panel on Exhibit G. If any building footprints change, if buildings move around, if there's a change of colors, those are elements that the planning commission would weigh in on. So in effect, what we're doing is we're really doing a very basic review of a landscaping plan and then scrubbing these site plans against the development agreement to the approved site plans in the development agreement to see if there are any changes. So your discretion here would be basically, we can't require items above and beyond what the development agreement has, but you can certainly hold the development and the developer to that 2017 development agreement. Are there any other questions on that?
That's great, thanks.
Okay. The project was approved in 2017 as a mixed use project. It is in phases of build out. So we've had townhome components, we've had the cottage lots come in, and then now some of the larger 3-story townhomes are being constructed. And this review represents just the first phase of apartments and specifically the clubhouse. I've got a snip that I've taken off of the exhibit in the development agreement of the clubhouse. And you'll notice that the square footage of the clubhouse and the size of the pool and a few things, they just look different from one another. And the development agreement is silent on the square footage of the clubhouse itself. It's very specific in footprints of the apartments, footprints of the condo projects, of the independent living facility. But in this particular case, it really doesn't say the clubhouse has to be X square footage. So in staff's opinion, knowing that this is one of at least 2 clubhouses on the site, the clubhouse seems to meet the intent of the development agreement. The places where we notice there being a change, one is the color board on the clubhouse elevation appears to be green. That could be, my monitor versus the blues and whites and browns that are in the development agreement. But I think we need to assure that this does in fact meet that building, that elevation exhibit from the 2017 development agreement. This staff report was sent to the developer with a number of comments, and they had an opportunity to respond to those comments. So you actually have an updated drawing in here, but there was a missing sidewalk to the south that appears now to have been drawn in. Staff is very interested in making sure that pedestrian connectivity is maintained in this site. We don't want there to be sidewalks to nowhere where people just cut across the grass to get to the pool and the clubhouse. So making sure that submittal, or that's correct. The landscaping as shown does meet the 20% requirement for the clubhouse parcel. Their updated landscaping plan shows the mechanical equipment at the clubhouse is being screened. There is no snow storage the way it was originally contemplated, but there is a submittal from the developer for snow storage to the north, spaces at a premium at Village at Prominence Point. So that's one thing that staff has continued to watch, is where you're going to stick the snow. And then during discussions with the developer, we've got power to the streetlights. I believe that currently the project, there's no power run, but there was a commitment from the developer in the summer that when the next phases come on, those streetlights, which are currently sitting in place but are not hooked up to power, would be hooked up. This feels like a great opportunity in this portion to hook those streetlights up to power, and then make that a condition that, from this point on, each remaining phase to be constructed should have its streetlight network for each component turned on at the time of those approvals when construction commences. I talked about the color for the architectural comment. Staff's recommendation for this one is approval. There are some conditions: meet the engineer's review memo, connect the missing sidewalk, connect the streetlight infrastructure, make sure the clubhouse color meets the color palette of the original development agreement, and staff needs to complete and approve the one lot administrative subdivision prior to building permit being issued for the clubhouse. And with that, I'll ask if there are any questions.
Any questions from the commission? No questions. Would our applicant like to address us on this?
Yeah.
So there was a couple of questions posed by staff specifically about the color. Did you catch all those in there?
Yeah, excuse me.
Oh, yeah.
Jack Barrett, 34806, North 84 Scottsdale, Arizona. Here on behalf of Village at Prominence Point. So I have to be honest, I am colorblind. And so I'm deferring to anybody else but me. Okay. So I can tell you that, so the goal is to stay within the spirit of the agreement, always within the color palette, etc. It was chosen an awfully long time ago, as you guys all know. So if there is some, I mean, again, colorblind guy here, this is terrible. So I will just say this: we will meet or exceed the expectation for the color palette, because there's, I mean, if it shades in the pictorial there that maybe is off, I'm happy to do whatever we can to make it more clear that we'll comply with the palette board.
This is where Commissioner Arner shines, is with the colors.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't suffer from your specific ailment, although my brother and my grandpa do, but I have really bad taste.
Yeah.
So,
That's another one.
So I do believe that the theme down there is blues and whites and silvers, if I'm corrected. Does the commission feel like forest green is congruent with those? I don't specifically know, but I don't think so.
Well, are you okay with this recommended condition of approval that change the color of the clubhouse to meet the color palette in Exhibit G of the original development agreement?
Yeah.
I think that'll cover it.
Okay. So there were other questions about the sidewalk. It looks like those have been changed on the plan now, correct?
And connecting the streetlights.
Connecting the
Yeah, I'd like
streetlights.
to just clear the record for a couple items, if that's okay.
Sure.
So first off, we're at like 24.5 units per acre, just an FYI. The lighting, that was a big faux pas. That was just a design flaw. Let's just call it what it is. It just was. We're relying on the clubhouse that got delayed along with a number of other things. So what we actually did, the HOA has gone in and we've actually hired a contractor to go in there outside of our existing contractor who was in there. It was just a mistake. What we planned on doing is metering it right off the clubhouse. Clubhouse got delayed with a number of other things. And so what they're doing is they're metering the lights off the buildings themselves, off the townhomes. And that's how we're resolving it. So we hired a completely separate electrical contractor. I was gonna tee up my HOA manager, Matt Mendenhall, who's just done a great job for us, and he was right on that. And we started that process, oh golly, I want to say in June, but we have just had a dickens of a time getting contractors out there, candidly. It's just really, really tough right now. So we're also going to be doing phase 3 as well. We have a contractor we selected here about 2.5, 3 weeks ago. So we don't have the same issue again. We want to deal with it right now. It's unacceptable not to have that lighting. That's a liability. Yeah, just can't have it.
Okay, sounds like you don't object to any of the conditions then
No,
laid
not
out.
at all. No.
Okay. Anything else for us on this? We have 2 more items. I'm sure we'll hear more from you tonight.
No, no.
Thank you. Okay. Yeah, we're still open for public comments. Yeah.
Marilyn Hayatala, Village of Prominence Point. And I have a couple of questions. The size of the clubhouse, I know that it's not in there. The size that we've been given is like 2,500 square feet for the amount of people we have at the Village at Prominence Point. That's like putting the Brady Bunch in a tiny house to accommodate for the exercise room, for the area for people to congregate. And I have no idea what size of pool they're gonna try and put in to accommodate all of that. And then once you get the apartments in, there's supposed to be another clubhouse that's supposed to go in. But in the meantime, you're gonna have all of those people at that one spot. We've been waiting for this amenity since we got in over 1.5 years. And I'm excited that it's finally come to this point where it's gonna be built. But not just myself. I know there's several other people in the development that are concerned about the size of the clubhouse. Especially with the diagram that Scott had put up earlier, the clubhouse takes such a small space in that area that is set aside for that development of the clubhouse. Also, Scott had mentioned something about the snow removal, where the snow storage is gonna be to the north. I'd like to know where on the north side of that subdivision. I don't know if any of you have been there. There's nowhere to put it. There's nowhere on the north side to store snow. And I am glad we finally have the lights. Thank goodness that took over 1.5 years to finally get the street lights on. And that has been a blessing to finally get that, because it is so dark down there that it has been quite a hazard, and it has been scary for a lot of the people on the west end, is where you have the 55 and older in the cottages. And so they've been down there without any lights. So that has been great to have that done. And Jack mentioned that that is actually being drawn off of the townhomes. So is that a separate meter, or are the townhomes having to pay for the lights? That's my question on that as well. Is who's paying for that if it's drawing off of the meters from the townhomes? So,
Thank you, ma'am. Fair question. One I'm not able to answer for you tonight. I think that's a fair question.
Gentleman here that could answer.
Yeah. So you'll have final rebuttal once all our comments are heard. So there could be someone else online. So I'll hold off if there is.
There is a raised hand from Sandy.
Okay. Sandy, would you like to address us?
I think you might
Go
be
ahead.
on mute, Sandy. I have to take it off.
Give you a few seconds, Sandy, to address us if you would like to. If not, we'll assume it's a,
For me?
there you go.
Okay, I would like to also ask how he's metering the streetlights off of the townhouse buildings. I've been discussing this issue with our HOA, and I don't know how he thinks it's such a wonderful HOA because we've all had problems with it, but I've been going back and forth with them forever to get these streetlights turned on because we have a lot of children here. And aside from them having nothing to do here at all, because there's no clubhouse, there's no playground, there is nothing. It's taken forever to get these streetlights on. I suggested getting a temporary power station and hooking it to that. And I was told that was so outrageously expensive, it couldn't be done. And if it's being hooked up to the townhouse buildings, I live in a townhouse. I don't want to pay for the streetlights for this whole community. And you should have come here with an answer to that. And I agree with Corlin on where's the snow going? We have no area north of here to move this snow. I think he should be able to answer our questions tonight.
Thank you, ma'am. Any other questions? Okay, our applicant does have final rebuttal if he chooses to use it. So.
So a couple of things. So I used to be in the snow and ice control business for 30 years in Alaska. I know a little bit about snow storage. And we do have the appropriate area to do it. It is north of the ILF and the patios. It's right behind. It's basically, anybody remembers the history here, we were going to have a thoroughfare go through the cul-de-sac. It's in that location right there. That's one. And if we have to take up space, if there's not enough room, we'll take up visitor spots, just like any other development. That snow in this region happens to melt, which is in our benefit. In Alaska, we didn't have that when I was in that business. In terms of the lighting, that's the HOA that pays that. They're not metered to somebody, a residence meter at their house. We're using the building as the structure to mount the meter to pull the power to the site, as I understand from the electrician. So you probably saw them out there trenching, et cetera. That, you know, the HOA pays for that. That's not anything that the individual homeowner will pay for. Yeah, just wouldn't happen.
So the townhouse building itself is really what you're using as the structure.
Yeah, yeah. So before we were going to use the clubhouse, that again, that didn't work out.
So they're not drawing meter or power behind their own meters.
Right.
They're, yeah, understood.
You know, there was another question that was brought up, and I know there is a diagram in the staff report that has sort of a comparison of the snapshot of the approved 2017 clubhouse site versus what is proposed, you know, as submitted right now for 2021. Is there a huge difference in the square footage of the building and the pool size?
No, not the pool size. The
Pool's
pool
the
size,
same.
I don't think we've ever really dialed that in as well as maybe we could have way back when, because if you keep in mind here, some of the
You've
stuff
got
is,
the pool size on here.
oh, is it on there?
Yeah.
Okay.
On the proposed,
what do you-
it's 20 feet by 40 feet for the pool.
No, but what I'm saying is the original one. I don't
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't
the
recall
original
that.
ones on there, but the building configuration is clearly different on
Yeah.
the site. But what I don't have a sense of is it significantly smaller, the clubhouse itself?
So I want to say it's about 350 square feet smaller, something like that. I believe it was, I want to say 2,850 feet stands out in my mind. I think we're at like 2,500 right now.
Okay, so similar size, just a different configuration.
Yeah, and we went with the full rectangles. Steve Davies, who's not here tonight, he's a contractor for, I want to say 45 years, let's just say. And he said, whenever you have an L shape, just keep in mind, you're losing a lot of efficiency in your building. He goes, we just need to get away from that altogether. The other thing too, that one of the other advantages that we had is we wanted that clubhouse to look somewhat down the activity area, so the green belt and the bocce court there. It's just down from it on the green belt. That was the other kind of the reason. You can, if you look at the L-shaped building, if you pull it up, you got the very end cap there, if you will, that'll have a view. And if you look over, you'll have another piece there, but a good majority of that building looked up the mountains. Not that that's a bad view, but my choice as a developer was to make sure it looked out over the green belts and take advantage of that view corridor.
But you don't feel that the proposed clubhouse building is smaller, providing less, space for residents to enjoy than the
No,
original?
not at
proposal?
all. No. In fact, the fitness area was a big hot button with me. What you gotta remember with these, I know everybody wants to get it there and we want to get it there. That's what we're here tonight. But we all get excited about these things, but I'm going to guarantee if you walk through there at any given time and let's just give it a year after it's built, it'll be a ghost town in there. I mean, they're used for the leasing, the management, and for unfortunately, the guy had bragged to his buddies that, hey, look at this, and isn't this great? And they never go there again. It's just, we call it kind of the ball and chain of the multifamily business because you have to have it, right? You have to have that showpiece. But the reality, they don't get used as much as we'd like to see them used. So the next one's going to be a little different. It's going to be bigger, and there'll probably be a rooftop patio on that one.
That's the one near the apartment.
Yeah, I'm very high on the rooftop patio. That's a trend that I think makes a lot of sense in today's environment of health issues.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
One from me. Thank you. Okay, discussion and a motion on this. Don't make me talk again.
I'm okay with the conditions of approval. It sounds like they've addressed everything.
To me, the only ambiguity there is the size of the clubhouse.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, where there's not numbers stated, there's nothing for us to say, oh, this is 50 square feet shy of what we need or anything. I believe it fits the intention of the ordinance, and which is what we're supposed to analyze. We do not have discretion here tonight. What we have is an administrative obligation to review and say, does this meet the development agreement? So I would consider you to angle your decisions in that direction.
Okay. I'll make a motion that we approve the clubhouse as shown with the noted conditions of approval.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion on that. Okay, let's call for a vote. Commissioner Webb,
Yes.
Commissioner Lunt,
Yes.
Commissioner Nancaro,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. The motion passes.
Can you remind me who provided the second?
Ms. Commissioner Webb. Webb.
Webb.
Okay, item number 8 is going to be related. Mr. Hess, are you still online?
Yep, I am. So number 8 is, sorry, I just jumped back to 7. So number 8 is the approval or consideration of the independent living facility. So this is a component of the project that sits in the current undeveloped island portion that's surrounded by the cottages, which have been developed. This is one we did a review of what you had existing and then what was proposed. And it's an example of the development agreement having a base number in the square footage for the building, as well as some setbacks and language relating to setbacks in the development agreement about if a setback isn't called out on the original development agreement exhibit B, then you do your best to essentially analyze it in place with a scale ruler to see if any of those setbacks have changed. So Staff has had a discussion with the developer on this over the summer. We've had an opportunity for our city engineer, city manager, city attorney, planning director to all review, provide comments back. And while I think that the ILF as submitted is a wonderful amenity, it's a beautiful building, it's really a place for residents of North Ogden to age in place in this city and maybe sell single family homes on the hill and move into a highly amenitized multifamily independent living facility. It is one area where staff's recommendation is that we really have a building that's larger than the development agreement has. And that's a substantive change that we can't administratively recommend approval on. What we're recommending tonight in effect is that Planning Commission weigh in on the ILF as it's been proposed and help make a recommendation that the council would then consider in regards to a development agreement amendment in the case of the independent living facility. So have some significant comments on pages 6 through 8 of the site, really related to the building increasing in size. It's moving from 21,850 square feet to 26,650 square feet. The developer had provided a narrative, which I think the Planning Commission should take into account when weighing this decision. There is, in regards to 4 years later, the market changing, being responsive to perceived market needs, as well as what they think is going to be the best fit for residents in the future, and really just come to some level of agreement on whether or not this meets the intent of the development agreement, but is larger in fact for these justifiable reasons, or where the Planning Commission's support in that is, with ultimately the council being the one that will weigh in. So we do have some conditions of approval. We need to meet the requirements of the engineer's review memo, a development agreement to bring the old development agreement into line with the 2021 submittal. That the reverse of that would be redesign the building to fit the footprint of the original independent living facility. There's potentially some remaining improvements needed to the stormwater detention basin on the south side of 1700 North. As part of this project, there have been interim temporary detention basins, but we're really at a point where it's just time to finalize and complete all improvements. I think they're close, if not fully ready for all storm detention to go to that major detention area. And then there is, again, a one lot administrative Silverton Quarter active adult community subdivision that converts the existing island piece from a remainder parcel in the previous subdivision, with the cottages being approved and the townhomes being approved, to a one lot subdivision that would be then a building lot. So it's an administrative approval. What it really relates to is how that property is looked at from a tax standpoint, and it made a lot of sense for them to keep it as a remainder parcel until such time as the ILF would be developed, and then you subdivide that, quote, subdivided in a one lot subdivision to give it that building potential to receive a building permit. So that's a real quick overview of this one. It's nuanced. There's a lot of information. We can have a full discussion if Planning Commission has any consideration, but just trying to be cognizant of everybody's time and hopefully have the Planning Commission weigh in on this item as far as a development agreement change.
So Mr. Hess, you said the ILF building in staff's view is larger than a building would be permitted in the city of North Ogden. Am I putting words in your mouth?
No, I'm sorry. It's larger. It's larger than the building was permitted in the development agreement.
There, okay.
So
okay.
Yeah, sorry. No comparison of this building to any other building in North Ogden. Just really as it relates to the development agreement.
So staff's view, again, I don't want to put words in your mouth. Staff's view is that the increase in size is so substantial that it no longer fits the original intent.
Yeah, when you have the number called out, there's and John, I'll ask if you'll correct me if I'm wrong. I think there's a provision in there of maybe like a 10% provision where it does allow some shifting and moving and because things change. A building on a 2017 plan may move a few feet because of the elevation of the sewer service or some other, technical reason. But for, this is an increase of approximately 18%. It's just beyond what we feel we can administratively approve in the review of the original development agreement versus today's submittal.
Okay, and is that size, is that 18%, is that footprint or is that size of the building? Meaning, a building has 3 dimensions to it. So are we talking
Square footage.
Square footage
of the footprint.
square footage of the
That's-
footprint?
It's
Okay,
square
thank
footage of the footprint. Yep. So that number, yeah. So we're talking a footprint of 21,850 15 square feet. Now it's a footprint 26,650. So then, yeah, that increase goes vertical on each of those floors. Yeah.
And how many floors is it again?
It's a mix of 3 and 4 story. So you have, you've got 3-story to the west, 4-story to the north. This is another point in staff's review of this is it's difficult to tell, but the assumption is that the building splits from 3 to 4 stories approximately in the center of the building. And now it's more like a 35, 65 or so percentage of a smaller percentage of 3-story building, a little larger percentage of 4-story building. And then the developer is offsetting some of that size with providing this rooftop amenity. And John, I'd sent John some drawings from the developer that I neglected to put in the staff report for your consideration that we can pull up and look at, which will be a unique to this project type of amenity. It's really a high-end amenitized development. But it's just one of those things that it's beyond the scope of what staff feels like we can recommend approval on based on the percentage change.
Okay, so what further questions? So does the increase in footprint come with an increase in housing units too? Or is each unit becoming bigger? I would doubt that's the case.
It's the second. So 68, the development agreement is explicit in the number of units.
Okay.
So the number of units stays the same. The units grow in place. And then there's additional underground parking that's being provided that wasn't contemplated, but the parking for the site as a whole is a parking minimum, not a parking maximum. So the developer is attempting to provide or would like to provide more parking as a whole and specifically for the ILF.
Okay, so parking was a concern of mine because as the building grows, I was wondering, does the parking lot need to grow? So am I correct to understand that the developer is proposing an increase to the size of the building, and as some kind of compensation to the city, there will be an increase in parking as well? I mean, is that a trade-off that this is giving us? Rooftop amenities and an increase in parking?
Sort of. The increase in parking is just in response to demand. People, even folks who live in multifamily housing, still want to own 2 vehicles. They want to have a 4-wheel drive vehicle that'll get them up to the mountains. Even if they take transit, if they work from home, people still typically have their vehicles. So that's just the developer is covering themselves as far as sellable units. They want people to come in and know that there's going to be enough parking for them. The size increase doesn't increase the number of units, so therefore it should not require an increase in parking. It's really just a matter of those units growing and the amenities that those units would include in them.
Right, but the changes are getting us increased parking though, right? I'm just thinking.
That's a way to look at it.
Yeah. Okay. Do we have other questions for Scott? Thank you. Okay, would our applicant care to address us? Same routine as last time?
So when we came originally with this, it was it's written in the development agreement. This building is in concept form. It's written in there. It is concept. Concepts, you can dig up the definition if you want, but it's a concept. We don't have full-scale drawings at the time. We don't have full design. And I'm gonna just tell you, if we would have designed it to that level that we had in the original, and let's just say full on architecturals to CDs, we would have been throwing those out after the advent of COVID. I remember sitting on that site June, July, maybe of 2020 with the mayor, Rob Scott. And
We had the outdoor kind of presentation.
no, there was two other meetings outside of that with the mayor. And my comment was, I have a really strong feeling. This is just really at the very beginning of COVID, within the first, say, 6 months, 5 months. And I said, I have a feeling this is going to change things more than we all know. And we're like, well, of course, who knows? And, maybe somebody just thinks I'm just mouthing off, but we have to address the market. We have to, or we don't, we fail. And so what we did with this is, as soon as this occurred, Steve Davies and I really sat down and talked about it. And I said, we need more open air space, social areas, period. You just have to have them right now. So we got to work. We've been working on this for, oh golly, we dug in probably June of 2020, July of 2020. And, we don't apologize for any of the changes. They're all positive. Brandon, I know you've had that calculator. I remember you on parking. I'm not messing with you on parking. It's just not going to happen. We're not having that discussion. So with the aged housing, like a building like this, and Scott, you can chime in, please, if you think different, but nationwide, they show the average parking at 0.70 for buildings like this. On purpose, we wanted to create more parking for the very first time. We wanted to ask for no more units, livable dwelling units. We wanted to exceed. And one of the things that Scott had asked me is, he said, well, do you feel like some of that parking, the visitor parking back there, could be shared? And I said, absolutely. That's the reason we did this. If you'll look at, Rob Scott said this some time ago. He said, listen, you're going to have ebbs and flow of your statistics as you're moving through this development. It's 34 some odd acres. You've got 607 units, and you've got, I can't remember the number of parking spaces. I don't know, 1,500, something like that. It's a huge amount. It's almost 2.0. I think it's like technically 1.98. And he said, look, you're going to be shy sometimes of landscape requirements. You're going to be shy of parking. But when we came on the corner and we were talking about the 7-Eleven, I remember you guys saying, hey, we're not going to give you all the credit for the parking. I was fine with that. That made sense to me. So every place that we we're going to add parking. I'm a big fan of underground parking right now, by the way. I am, because it's less asphalt. Now, in our case, we knew we needed some more parking in the facility, right? Because if you're going to lose some here, you got to pick it up somewhere. Scott, there's got to be this leveling that occurs. And so we had to look for opportunities to create more parking. This is a great spot to do it. And when we went underneath and created the subterranean parking, I looked at Steve one day and said, why aren't we providing like nearly a 1-to-1 underneath? We could do it on the footprint. And so what happened is we actually had to go into the units, though, after actually looking at what was selling on the 55 and older patios. And we sat the brokers in. We said, tell us who's buying these. What does this buyer look like? What do they want? And they wanted dens. They wanted a little bigger living area. And they just wanted more space in general. And so what we did is went back to work and said, instead of say more like an east-west orientation with the units, you'll see now they're more of a northwest. In other words, it grew this way. The building grew in length, but that was in response to getting the parking underneath. I think we've got 61 units. We weren't quite a 1-to-1. There's going to be some odd people out on that one. It just is what it is. I can't change that. But we also have, I think, 42 surface parking spaces. So we looked at it as just an absolute win, candidly, to not come back here and ask for more units, more parking or less parking. That was not our goal. Our goal was to overexceed. The rooftop patio, I think that's just going to be the bomb. Those have become very, very popular in America right now, even up in Alaska, of all places. The commercial buildings are open. You're seeing people, it's only 2 months, some are up there, right? 3 months. But you're seeing people up there, businesses open, and they're very popular, and I think they're gonna become more popular. And that trend is gonna continue. It's so much that I think that the second clubhouse will most definitely probably have a patio, a rooftop patio on that. And I think that'll be quite a spot, because you'll be able to look east at mountains, the Wasatch Frontier, and you'll be able to look west down the Greenbelt, right down the, I mean, it'll look like a fairway, it'll be beautiful. And you could, you know, the girls, both our real estate brokers are big pickleball people. And they said, oh, and you know, people could view and watch the pickleball tournaments out there. Okay, I'm not a pickleball person, but I'll go with what's popular in the market. But we had to really take a look at this. We also had to look at the sense of arrival when you walk in that front door. That's different. That's entirely different. We had to open up some space there. It just widened the building, it widened it east to west, lengthened it, excuse me, and it widened it. And there's not much we can do about that. It just, to meet what we wanted to do, to meet the market, it took that. You know, we've got nice wide 6-foot wide hallways now. I think they were like 5 before. I mean, but it's a foot. So I mean, we looked at it as we were clearly meeting the intent of the development agreement in terms of what we're providing to the community. I think in some ways we're actually over delivering, candidly. I do think that, because this city has never seen something like this.
Can you remind me where you're at in the development stage here? So this independent living facility was going to be surrounded by cottages, correct? And have those cottages been built?
All but 3.
You know, I might be remembering this wrong, but a year ago, early on in the pandemic, you gave us a presentation out in the parking lot there, kind of between like where the car wash is and where
I recall.
the convenience market is going to be. And I almost remember that there was a proposal to build this facility in a different location, like behind the 7-Eleven. Am I remembering that?
No, that's not correct.
It's always been designed to be right where.
Right
it is.
here.
Okay.
What we talked about though, Nicole, excuse me, Ms. Carol, we actually talked about a sister building to it.
Okay.
Because remember, somebody wanted, what's that fellow's name? Phil. Still on the council?
Yeah.
Councilman Swanson.
Yeah, Councilman Swanson. He really wanted that sense of arrival. He was fighting that 7-Eleven.
He wanted it closer to 7. Okay, that's what I
So,
remember.
so what we said is, well, you know, 7-Eleven is where it is. I can't change. You guys did your job there. But I said, how about we create a really nice building, kind of a twin to this one. But let's just say this one here is for sale. We would make that one say for rent and keep it on the Greenbelt right next to the clubhouse, right? But it would be a bigger building. And I think John Call pointed out, he said, hey, listen, you know, the building height restriction in this area currently is 51 feet.
Yeah. So it was a no-go.
No, our directive from the mayor and Rob Scott and John was like, get this done first.
Okay.
And then let's talk over here. I was like, fine.
We
put the
I just want to
gas
make
on,
sure,
so
like,
let's get this
we
done.
moved it.
Yeah, no, we want to put our resources and energy into finishing the clubhouse. That's number one. I just met my lenders today at Pocatello. And it's been fully funded. We just need the approval to get that going. The one thing that you got to keep in mind too, and I know it's very difficult for the residents to weigh in on this, but we get the clubhouses by virtue of density. That's what pays for it. The sales, rent, you name it. And we have to, you know, I was the first one to look at another multifamily project in town here. And I was the first one to say, oh, this isn't gonna fly. We gotta have a second clubhouse. We're very, very mindful of our tenants, our residents, making sure that they're gonna have the amenities that are gonna keep them there. Not just buy there. We don't want them to move out as soon as they get there because they're unhappy. That doesn't do us any good. So we have to watch this. Anyway, that's kind of the story on the ILF. Any other
Thank you.
questions?
Okay, we're open for resident comments. Or general comments, I should say.
Corley Hightower, Village of Prominence Point. I feel like Skittles are coming out of a unicorn horn when Jack talks. There's been a lot of promises that have not been fulfilled. There is no parking in that development. You guys really need to go down and look. I don't know how you're gonna put underground parking when you've got a water table that is as high as it is down there. We're at a creek. I don't know how you're gonna put underground parking there. We pay $140 a month for our HOA fees. At this point, I'm getting my lawn mowed and my driveway shoveled for that amount. Them wanting to increase 5,000 square feet for that independent living. When we purchased our home, that looked like it was a green belt, that it was going to be open space. Whatever that teeny little writing was in there, excuse me, was not legible for you to see that this is going to be an independent living house that is going to take away your whole view of the mountains out in front of your home. It's going to block the sun from keeping the snow off of my front yard and off of the road, which is the whole purpose. We bought a house with a south-facing location. I know that there's a lot of people that are not happy with this development, and I know you've heard about that as well. I know there's not a lot we can do about this independent living facility because it was in the development agreement. I'll tell you what, we built our home for our final home. And I have been so disappointed. And that's my bad on some parts, but it sure as heck is not totally my fault. The information we were given, they want to take out a third of my backyard for a trail that I had no idea was in there until I went to put a fence in. And now they're telling me that there's going to be a trail in my backyard. And that I'm going to have to lose 30 feet on my west side and 25 feet on my north side of my backyard that we paid extra for a larger lot. Everything that we've been told has been, I shouldn't say everything, the majority of things we have been sold on this development have not come to fruition. It has been false information. And like I say, he says that they're going to put snow over on that north side. That north side is off of 300 East is where they were going to put the throughway from our development over to 1900 North. That's the only space that the kids have to do anything. And then if we continue with the snowfall we're getting, if we end up having to put snow storage there, then where are the kids going to be? And if it gets more than that, you're going to put it in a parking spot. We don't have enough parking spots as it is. If I have company come over, they have to park in my backyard. Thank God I'm on that side where they can park at the park and walk through. But for anybody else, there's nowhere to park. They ended up having to put 4 parking spots up by the car wash because the development of the townhomes up there, the driveways were too narrow or too shallow for them to be able to park. So they had to add the parking. So there's 4 spots up there for people to park. And then you've got, I counted at one time, that's down by where their sales office was for parking. But the volume of people you have in this development compared to your parking is not adequate. There's not enough room. The streets are too narrow to park on the streets. That's why they became private streets, which we had no idea was going to happen. But in order to do that, you could make the streets smaller, which is another Skittles moment, in my opinion. I can't do anything about the development or the ILF going in, but adding another 5,000 square feet, I don't know That's a lot more space that's gonna be gone that can be used for actual visitor parking. Because if those other 3 townhomes get developed on the west side, there's absolutely no parking for anyone. Now, if those 3 units or those 3 lots turned into a green space park with parking, okay, maybe you could increase your other space. There is nowhere to park. That is a huge thing that I am really struggling with. And for people to be able to have company, especially during the winter, that's a long walk if there is space out by the club or where the sales office was for older people to have to walk down to the cottages. And just making sure I've covered everything. And there are people that have been moving because of how disappointed they are with the development. And we've lost some really good people. So thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Your comments.
We do have a comment online.
Yep, Sandy.
So again, some of this, as stated in our opening meeting statement, some of these comments, we prefer that they limit to 3 minutes. And if you agree with the previous speaker, you can say as such, that kind of speeds this along. However, we are interested in hearing your comments, definitely, and I don't want to put any limitations on them. So go ahead, Sandy.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, Mr. Barrett.
So ma'am,
I
we're
heard
going to have
you
to have you address your comments to the Planning Commission, not to a
Okay,
member of the audience.
to the commission.
Thank you.
So Mr. Barrett had said that he's very mindful of his tenants. I don't think he's mindful at all of us. I mean, we have been lied to by his realtor, Lori Lee, on so many different instances. And when we complain or we try to address these issues, we get no response. I've called the HOA. Numerous people here have called the HOA, and he absolutely refuses to respond. We've had Zoom meetings with our community where we invited him. He refused to participate.
She muted herself.
Ma'am, we're no longer hearing your comments if you are still saying them.
Can you unmute?
Going to bring in. This is a very small area we're talking about, and the amount of traffic is just, it's insane and we can't even comprehend it. And he's going to do this to people who were not told that this building was even being put in there. Their view of the mountains that they were promised in Lori Lee's sales pitch, which is still on YouTube. Anyone can go watch it if they like. She promised them this wonderful view of the mountains. This building is taking that view completely away. And they're all worried about the underground parking. We've had members of the city council tell us where the water table is and how far down they plan on digging. These people are terrified that their homes have been going to be flooded out. And the rooftop patio, is that something that's going to be available to all the residents here? Because those of us who are homeowners, the townhouses and the cottages, we're paying HOAs. That's the money that's going to be used to fix these roads, to take care of the pool, to take care of the clubhouse. But these tenants and renters going to have amenities that we don't have? That hardly seems fair to us. And we'd also like to know what's going to happen with those lots should you not be able to build over there and you have to go back on your agreement with Visionary, the empty lots that are by the creek. We don't have a pet park here, which Lori Lee promised us. And the city told us it was an area they were considering putting a pet park. It was never part of this development. You all took that from the city's plans and called it your pet park when it wasn't. And we don't know if that's ever going to happen. That's something those empty lots over there could be used for. I'm just very offended that Mr. Bear is going to stand up there and act like he's so responsive to us, and people here are so happy. We've had lots of people sell their units and move because they've been so unhappy. My neighbors right now, right next door to me, are selling because they got tired of every 3 months the date for the clubhouse and the pool to be completed was moved out another 6 months. When I first moved in, it was going to be done in 6 months in the fall. Then it was the spring. Then it was the fall. Now, nobody here has any clue when it's going to be built. I just want him to know how disappointed people here are with him. This could have been a wonderful place, but you've ruined it. And your wife with her.
Ma'am, please direct your comments to the planning commission.
Okay, sorry
Okay,
about
I
that.
just, I don't want to see anyone insulting someone's family members or anything. We're not going to get into that.
No, his wife is part of the management here. She's charging us for internet. It's part of our living here is we have to get our internet through her. And I'm wondering if that's going to be the same thing with the independent living facility and the apartments. I was wondering if he could answer that for us. It's $125 a month for internet that anybody else in this city could get themselves for 60 some dollars. But she's got the contract for this whole area. It just.
Okay, and again, thank you for your comments.
Hey,
Let's
I'm
direct them
done.
towards this
Thank you.
application, please.
Yep,
There's nothing
I'm
I can do
done.
about internet
Thanks.
tonight. Does that conclude your comments, ma'am?
Yep, it sure does. Thank you. I'm done.
Thank you.
We have a raised hand from someone named Treva.
Okay, Treva. If you're speaking, we can't hear you, ma'am.
Well, it looks like it's moving around. Okay, now Treva should be able to speak.
Okay, you can speak now.
Shriva on mute.
Yes, she's still muted.
Shriva, if you could unmute and speak so we could hear you.
So the attendees list and raised hands shuffled a bunch of times. So
Okay, we'll be patient for a second.
Herself now.
Can
Okay.
you hear me?
We can hear you.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I'm so sorry. That took me a long time to figure out. Okay. My name is Treva Cisco. I live in the cottages. And, we are really excited that the lights have been turned on because they were correct that it was very scary down here. It was very dark. My question is on this proposed assisted living. Are they going to add additional lights on that center aisle? Or I'm sorry, center island?
I don't have that in front of me, ma'am. I don't know. We'll
Okay.
give our applicant final rebuttal if he chooses to address that, or does staff happen to know that? I don't
Okay.
think additional lighting would be on the plan, right?
There would be some lights attached to the exterior of the building.
Okay. And then the concern I have about the additional size to the building, on the original plans, it did show that near the west side of this island, there was going to be some parking. What the other residents have said about the parking being very minimal, I mean, it is really true. And if any of us, let's say in the cottages, were to have family members over for holiday dinners or whatever, there's not any parking for anybody. With the first proposal, or the one that I saw when I purchased my house, showed the parking there at the west side corner. It would have added maybe 4 to 6 additional parking, but that would have been I mean, that would have been nice to have in case somebody, was having a dinner and their guests could have somewhere to park. Now, as it stands, there's no parking on the street because there is no room to park on the street and there is no additional parking. So that is my concern on, and it seems to me that the extension on this building seems to be on the west side. So that is my concern. And then the other concern I have is this underground parking. And if taking a look at the drawing, it seems that the underground parking comes from the north side and from a very narrow street. And I'm concerned that there's going to be enough room for people to even make that turn. And I also am concerned with the water table and that being, with them digging down into there. That's everything. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Do you have anyone else, Sean?
No, but there was a point where there were like 4 hands raised and now there isn't. So let's
Okay.
maybe give everyone a
Yeah,
chance.
we'll pause for a second if there are any additional public comments. Okay, would our applicant like to get his final rebuttal on this? That's an option he has.
So I would say this, that the majority of the concerns, first of all, the parking, I covered that. I can't say anything more on that. In terms of the green space, that comes with the multifamily as we build. It just, you've got to have the units to justify the construction of the amenities. In terms of lighting, in terms of snow storage, as I mentioned earlier, if we go subterranean parking, it does create some additional parking out in the surface. Some of that can be utilized for guest parking. Some of it can be even utilized for additional snow storage if it's needed. In terms of, the criteria on site distance from coming out of a driveway and lighting requirements, I'm going to defer to the engineers and the city on that, the requirements that they set. That's not my lane. Sorry. But we'll do what's appropriate.
Thank you. Okay, commissioners, we have opportunity for discussion and a motion here. I have a question for the city staff before we move on this. So where this is an administrative item, administrative items, we normally say, does this conform to the rules? Yes, no. What if, let's just throw out there that this were approved and this building were to be approved at a larger footprint. Do we have that discretion, or is this a recommendation that would go to the city council, because this development agreement is with the city council? Can we get a definition of that?
So
I'm not exactly sure what leverage I have in this realm.
So, sorry about my voice. I think Scott was trying to, when we talked about that 18%, was trying to say it's outside of that realm, and he's recommending that it be a legislative recommendation to the council for a development agreement amendment. The next one we're going to talk about is probably going to be the same scenario, where, and I don't know that it's tied directly to this, but because of the increase in the few townhome units that was done 2 years ago, as a development agreement change, we're going to have a reduction in apartment units. That was part of the discussion, and so we anticipate a change in the apartment area. And anyways, there's two things are happening where we think it's probably better to have the council weigh in and make a development amendment agreement, and this is one of them. So
Can I, again, speaking purely in hypotheticals, if we agreed with you on that, if we agreed with you on that, would our proper action be to deny the application or would it be to table it for the, adjustment to the development agreement.
I think it would be a recommendation, that it wouldn't be a table.
I don't think we make recommendations here tonight, on administrative items, do we?
Well, but so if you agree with the assessment from Scott on the size being an issue, then you, at some point, you need to make a recommendation, and there's no reason why you can't make that tonight. Or you could ask the council to weigh in on it and change the development agreement, and then come back to you for review. The nice thing is that the way we structured it is you're supposed to, in theory, give a recommendation on any development agreement change. So the council, I'm not sure how aware they are of this concern over the footprint size, but I think they're at least somewhat aware of it. And I don't know what their response will be, because we don't
Certainly.
typically poll them before we bring them stuff.
And we can't speak for the council.
Right.
Yeah. Thank you. So as I see it, we have a application for a larger building than I think is within our jurisdiction to approve tonight. However, the trade-off of that building is if the building goes in as stated at that same footprint or within the 10% growth parameter, and then the applicant would also only be held to those same number of parking units. I think what they've proposed here it helps the parking situation. I can't comment on, not being an engineer, I can't comment on underground parking, whether that is going to be an underground swimming pool or not. I do not know, and I would leave that up to engineering, because again, I'm a computer guy. And for the turns, I actually agree with the applicant that should be black and white. And if that's given an approval by an engineer, I think that's what we go with. I have a concern that adding to the building increases just the feeling of, again, open space isn't always just physical footprint. It's not ground, it's what's around you also, if something is really looming down on you, you're not going to feel as open as you would otherwise. And this building, when it grows like this, it's a 3-story building. So, and in some places 4. So the closer it is to the cottages, that's gonna, those voices tonight were very well heard, and there could be effect on, a shadow for snow and things like that. One of the questions I asked the applicant was, are the cottages built? And I think I would have an easier time if the cottages weren't built and we were saying, yeah, this is what it's going to be. And then buyers could come in, decide, does this building work for me? Yes or no. Then the situation we're in where we have.
This is the problem I'm having.
Yes.
Because, the beauty of a development agreement is it's all on paper, it's agreed upon, and these residents are buying these properties and investing based on this vision. And this vision has changed. When I got on this committee 6 years ago, we were talking about Village of Prominence Point, which was and it's just changed. The whole game plan just keeps changing. And I guess my level of skepticism about any of it is pretty low. You
feel skeptical.
I'm very skeptical about these plans and how they're all going to play out, and we keep changing these development agreements and then nothing ever happens. It seems like it's just taking forever for anything. I would like to see something move forward, if nothing else, but I think when we start talking about, this bigger footprint, and now these residents have purchased these homes based on this development agreement, and then this is just one more substantive change. So I don't know if I'm thrilled about it, but it's nice to see something moving, what I mean? I guess I'm just kind of skeptical about this. So
it feels like the people who live there are skeptical about it as well.
I just feel like, the vision sounds amazing, and, it looks like a beautiful thing and it's great, but so did the original visions for all this. And some of these things just don't seem like they've ever panned out. So that's where
and
my
again, I think to
skepticism is
reiterate
coming
what the applicant said, and I'm not disagreeing with you, it was that, when the rubber hits the road and these things start coming out, There's just inherently changes that happen. And so the question is, and I believe the applicant in this situation, when that this is a better building, meaning
It's beautiful.
for the residents of that
Designed
building, for the residents of that building,
Inside the building.
inside the building, this is a better design. It
But
will
it's
be,
higher,
it's bigger,
it's bigger,
it's bigger.
and it's higher.
Is it higher though than?
I
what
think
was
I
it
think we
is.
originally had a 3 and 4 story building there anyway. It was always going to be a big building. I don't think it would, I think it's changing its
It's
footprint.
longer.
And it's, and that, so it has smaller setback.
Yeah, do you know that? Is that correct? That the building is
Yeah.
longer, but not higher?
The building is longer, the overall height is the same, but it grows in width and it grows in length with the and then the area that's 4 stories tall is approximately 30 feet further west as well. So it's kind of a combination of overall just width wise, but the building still meets the height requirements in the development agreement of a 3 and 4 story building as defined from average grade, and the developer confirmed that in their response comments.
So this top one is the original plan. And the bottom one is the proposed plan. And I know it's hard to compare, but currently, I believe, let me change the color. Let me try to change the color. This was the original 40 to 50 foot dividing line. And this is now the proposed line. And so that's why there's all these it's just little shifts here and there. And that's why staff is saying, hey, we're not comfortable recommending this as an administrative item anymore.
Yeah.
I would feel comfortable agreeing with staff on that and yet still supporting the changes to the building, I think, or at least the direction of the changes of the building, meaning it doesn't fit the original development agreement in this commissioner's opinion.
Is it the spirit?
Well, I think it does. I think it's a independent living facility that is going to be nice and service part of our community that needs that. I think it does. When we start to shift on setbacks, we start to make the residents feel just a little bit more enclosed in. Okay, and that's what I do wrestle with. So I'm not saying that I disagree with the changes to the building. I do think that's something that needs to go to city council. I don't feel empowered to approve it as a planning commissioner.
I agree that it needs to go to city council.
Yeah, but so then I think we need to have a recommendation. Do we like the direction this is going, or does it need to stay to its?
I think trying to summarize in my mind a couple of facts and taking some of this emotion out of it, because I think it's emotional. I think one fact is probably the first fact to state is there is a level of skepticism. There's a level of skepticism from the people who live there, and that skepticism is based on these changes. And we're looking at another change. One of the other facts is there seems to be a parking concern with everybody, including the developer, like, parking's tight over there. With this building getting bigger, the square footage of the houses are getting bigger, the apartments, whatever you want to call them, the independent living facilities. There is some rooftop space that's being provided, likely for the people who live in the building, and there's some underground parking. So we get something that adds a solution to one of the concerns that doesn't change the footprint, which is parking. So I see that actually as positive. Now that obviously has to be addressed with engineering so it doesn't turn into a swimming pool, as was stated. But there's these trade-offs that kind of go back and forth, and these changes to it. It's creating cynicism on the council and with the residents. It was stated, one of the comments said, we've invited the developer to Zoom meetings to try to address some of these things, and they feel like they haven't been heard.
Commissioner Webb, I'd remind you that a lot of those comments were directed towards things that aren't part of this specific application, though.
Yeah,
which is what I'm struggling with.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
Yeah, not that I wasn't listening.
Yeah,
but does that really impact this building, like things like internet and things like that,
Yeah, and my point with that is addressing the skepticism comment in the beginning, and specifically with this application, the skepticism seems to be coming from changes, and we're addressing the change in the size of a building here. And so that's how I see it relating.
Yeah. You've hit the nail on the head, and the changes create delays.
That's right.
And it's the delays that have affected the amenities and
green
all of these
space.
things that the residents,
Yeah.
you know, I guess, you know, bought into this project for, under this development agreement. So I think you've hit the nail on the head. It's this, you know, it's the changes is really the heart of it. So, I mean, maybe this is a solution. I'm not against it. I'm just, you know.
So I'd like to, so it's actually not time for public comments.
Oh, I
Sorry.
just
We'll-
think with the same thing.
Okay. City staff may not ever think I'm listening to them, but I've very much heard Brandon Bell teach us that the place where you live is very much a part of having some, but how do you say that, Brandon? Something about having a place of dignity, or, you know, having a home. Can you restate that, how you say that?
You use the term density with dignity.
Density, yeah, and just having your home, it can be smaller, but it's about having a place that provides you with, hey, this is mine, and this gives me dignity. And I actually think that the increased size of the units increase that value for those residents.
For the residents themselves, inside the building.
What I struggle
would be
with
amazing.
is, are we robbing the cottages
Exactly.
of some of that, you know?
Who
And
bought into something else.
yeah, so it's not black and white for me.
No, me
It's
either.
really not black and white. I really honestly like the spirit of the changes to the building. I don't like the nuts and bolts of moving it closer that had to happen when you want to increase and put a nice thing on the top and make underground parking. I get all that. I get that has to happen. So I think anyway, I don't know how everyone
Are you
feels, but
prepared to make a motion? And then we.
yeah, I'd like to defer to you guys to make the motion, but if you're not, I could make a motion. I'm of the opinion that it's not within our ability to approve. I think it's black and white that a 10% give to the building could have been approved tonight. I think 18 exceeds our threshold, in my opinion.
Agree.
I,
And that would be, but we would need to determine though whether, in our opinion, we want to make a recommendation that we alter. Well,
correct, and that's the tricky part. So maybe we should just take it on that. So let's take this in two steps. Is that okay with the city?
Mhm.
Should we approve this tonight as is, yes or no? And then if not, so I'm of the opinion that we do not have the ability to approve this as is tonight.
Correct. I agree.
Okay, so now that takes us to step 2 of this. Would we recommend to the city council that they stick to their guns with the original agreement and give 10% of that? Or do we think that do we recommend that the development agreement could be altered in a way that accommodates some of this? Or all of it, or none of it?
I'm not prepared to make a motion on it because I don't,
You're not prepared to make a motion?
I'll vote on a motion, but I'm not.
Which is a bold statement because Commissioner Nancarrow usually is
I'm
the
usually
one.
the first one
Yes,
to make
she
one.
throws out the recommendations here. Yeah. If I had the council in front of me, I would, this is one commissioner of all of us, okay, it's just one person. I would say, hey, city council, I think you should work with the developer to alter the legislation a little bit to accommodate these principles, some of these principles. If you're going to get underground parking out of it, and it works, okay, and if you're going to get a rooftop and some bigger units for these people, give and take some of this. And I think there's probably a way where they can get a slightly bigger building and a slightly better design, and it's not going to be win-win-win because our residents here are not going to want any building there, I believe, and I wouldn't either. you know, there's a vacant lot in front of me, and I hope nobody ever builds there. But I think there's a way where we can maybe take some kind of a hybrid, possibly. I mean, and Mr. Barrett will probably say, well, you engineer it, Mason, and I can't do that. So,
Do development agreements have the ability to have a timeline with them, with penalties?
There are some that are built in, where they have an expiration or expectations.
And are those penalties typically paid to the city to administer stuff, to the homeowners association, to both?
Typically, it's not monetary penalties.
Okay.
In general, contract law for these type of things don't like monetary penalties very much.
What types of penalties are usually?
It's usually an expiration of the vesting. So if this isn't done by a certain time, then it's no longer vested. And you have to come back and get it re-upped or something.
Okay. Is there anything like that in this development agreement?
No, the only timeline requirement is that there be so there's two. One is that the clubhouse be included with the apartments, although never mind, that's not actually written in. The one that is there is it's the landscaping for the commercial area, that at a certain point, and I can't remember if it's when the apartments are done or they have to install landscaping there, whether there's buildings there or not, just because we don't want weeds there forever.
Yeah.
So that is one of the requirements in the agreement.
Yeah. Thank you.
So if there's no appetite for a motion, I will make one.
I think that would be appropriate because.
Well,
you
something has
probably-
to happen.
Well, I'm just saying you have been really more closely involved with this project from its inception.
I wouldn't say it's
So
inception.
you have more insight perhaps than I do, or.
I don't like that.
But I like the fact that
Okay.
you would make.
Well, my motion, and I can encourage you to vote on this how you will. You saw that I voted no against a motion tonight, and my motion would be that our administrative application is denied based on the fact that it doesn't meet the current development agreement with the city. Our recommendation to the city council would be to adopt some parameters that would allow a development, a building like this to be built with some setbacks and some increase in size overall. And that's been motioned and has not yet been seconded. And if it does not get seconded, the motion will die.
The only question with that, I guess, is if that motion is specific enough to really accomplish what's being asked. Because essentially what I hear in that motion is that we're denying it, as you stated,
Mhm.
but that our recommendation to city council is not necessarily that we agree with these changes, but we want them to look at the changes. Like, is that?
Well, I think it's to alter the building footprint enough to accommodate what the builder needs, or not needs, what the builder would like to do for the changes to the apartment building. I think and the reason I motioned this the way I did is, residents are gonna obviously not want a larger building in front of them. Okay. At the same time, if it means giving a 3% bigger building and it comes in at higher end units, they're probably going to be more in favor of their neighbors. I hate to say that this, the economics makes more favorable neighbors, and that's not what I'm trying to say. But those units are going to have a higher property value, and I think, in my opinion, there's some trade-off there. So yeah, is the building bigger? Yes. Is it so much bigger that it doesn't justify that? Or you know what I mean? I'm getting a higher end unit out of the bigger building. That may be something that would be palatable. And so I encourage the city council to probably look at a bigger building. They're not going to come in with a 20% bigger building, but I would encourage the city council that 15% bigger building would probably.
So you are essentially recommending that we pass on to the city council an amendment.
A recommendation.
A possible
To
amendment.
approve an amendment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A recommendation to approve and, working with the developer. And this is what the development agreement is in my mind, is they sit down with them and they say, well, what do you need? And he says, I need this. And they say, we're not. And they work together towards something. So my recommendation is the city council works with the developer and with an increased building size. I don't know if I've even worded that right, John. Am I crazy? Don't answer that. Am I off base?
I mean, it's not the cleanest motion, but
No,
it's
no.
also.
I've also had a lot of
not-
Mountain Dew tonight, and
it's
that's
hard
not going to be
To
clean.
make a very clean motion where you're talking about a recommendation to the council to weigh these things. I mean.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Unless Commissioner Lunt or Commissioner Nancaro have more comments on this, I will actually second your motion.
Well, thank you. And to defend my motion, I go back to something that when I got put on this planning commission, I didn't get put here because I know anything about real estate development. As a matter of fact, I did not want to be on the planning commission for that very reason. And the mayor at the time was Brent Taylor, asked me to. And one of the things that came up was the building of apartments and stuff. And I was like, oh, the residents don't want apartments. We don't want apartments. And he said, no, Brandon, what we don't want is crap.
Right.
Like there's nothing inherently terrible about an apartment complex, but I mean, there's nothing inherently bad about a duplex or, these are fine things. They get a bad knock in our city because some have been built at dirt cheap base level structures. And I think, we've heard a lot of skepticism about our builder here tonight, but I think what he's proposing is something that's a little more high end. And to do that, he needs a little more square footage. And so I may be wrong, and I've been wrong many times, but I'm sort of buying into that a little bit. So.
Actually, I think that that's an excellent way to phrase it, and that helps me, actually. So I was just reading the staff recommendation, and I think your motion covers this, says that we discuss the item, consider the requested changes, make a recommendation to city council regarding whether or not the development meets the spirit of the development agreement, and also make a recommendation to the city council on approval or denial of a development agreement amendment based on the current submittal. So I think your motion addresses that. So
Thank
I
you.
think we should move forward.
I'll second it.
So we have a motion and a second, and we can still discuss that as long as until you guys are comfortable. Are we ready for a vote?
Yeah, I mean, I'm comfortable with that. I just wanted to make sure that what we were recommending is actually going to accomplish.
Yeah,
What
would
was
actually help
intended.
them.
Okay, wasn't the cleanest. And I believe it's going to take some discussion to the city council. If this motion passes, it's going to take some discussion with the city council to tell them that point, that this was recommended, not because we think bigger buildings are better, but we think higher end buildings are more favorable. And we may need to increase that to get that. So I would think that would be the selling point there. So, okay, have we discussed this enough? Commissioner Nancaro, how do you vote?
Yes.
Commissioner Lunt?
Yes.
Commissioner Webb?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Okay, so the application is denied with a recommendation to the city council to increase the size of the footprint to allow a similar type building to be built. Did I word that okay? Okay. Item number 9. Okay, we're gonna take a slight break again. So we knew this was gonna be a long meeting. Okay, I think we have one more item. Thank you for your patience with our break. We have one more item, and Mr. Hess, you still in line to present to us?
Yep. Yep, I'm here. You ready?
Yep.
Okay, so the last of the items is the first phase of the apartment project. This is east of the Clubhouse parcel, east and south. It wraps around the Clubhouse parcel and is the first 100 units of apartments. We've gone through, kind of the way that we've looked at these before is as it compares to the development agreement. So we've done both a landscaping review as well as a where the buildings are located, setbacks, parking, that sort of thing, and indicated a few, again, what we think are substantive changes. There's a change in one of the buildings themselves. The apartment buildings are all labeled as building types like A1, A2, A2, F2, that sort of thing in the development agreement. The northwesternmost building has been changed. And then it also has been turned in place, and that is to provide room for an amenity that the developer would like to put in, which is 2 pickleball courts. And then there's some shifting of the buildings themselves where the setbacks have changed from maybe 18 inches between 2 of the buildings up to about 8 feet. And then you don't have the revised drawings in here, but the developer has come back and responded to the comments of some of the missing north-south pedestrian ways, the landscaping, there's a walkway focal point that's called out in the development agreement that I couldn't find in the plan. So the developer has been responsive in that side. Landscaping in this particular area is over the 20%. And the applicant, Mr. Barrett, had commented that Rob Scott, the previous planning director, had talked about areas in the development where there's ebbs and flows. So the ILF, for instance, that parcel as a standalone does not have the 20% landscaping, but when you compare it to the site as a whole and you take the apartments and they're in the 30% landscaping realm, you're able to average the site as a whole and pick that up. So there's additional landscaping being provided in this one component of the apartment project. The recommendation from staff is similar to the previous item. There's one call out. I'm not a landscape architect. I don't, I would never claim to know specific tree species, and it's maybe not something I expect the Planning Commission to know, but in the development agreement, it talks about the Planning Commission specifically reviews the landscaping components of these plans. And the plant table to include the tree types differs from the development agreement to the proposed plants. So staff's recommendation here would be for the project to meet all the requirements of the engineer's review memo. There should be a 1-lot administrative subdivision completed, which has been applied for, and then to, again, complete a development agreement to bring the 2017 development agreement into line with the 2021 submittal. There are many fewer, there's not the same level of substantive change here. The buildings aren't bigger. They're not asking for more units. The parking is essentially being provided per plan, but with the changes, the specific call out of changing out a building elevation and then the shifting of the buildings, we could probably take care of administratively, but again, staff doesn't want to overstep our bounds in what we can do administratively. We feel like once you start to change the buildings themselves, that gets into the substantive realm that really should look at the development agreement. And this is probably an opportunity, as John had pointed out, that there are changes to the total number of apartments now that there have been more townhomes provided. So to me, this kind of opens the door to correcting the development agreement for all of the apartment components. But because that's not the submittal we have in front of us today, that's more of a suggestion than a hard requirement of the developer to take that on at this time. So in the interest of time,
what's the concern of the city then? Just the fact that the buildings look different?
Yeah,
there's a different shape, like a different building style.
Yep, the development agreement is explicit in these are the buildings that you can build. So there's a certain number of buildings. And then the other thing is that no two buildings next to each other can be the same. That's specifically called out in the development agreement. But if you look at the drawing that John is showing on the screen right now, you'll see that that northwest building was previously accessed off of the northern right of way. And it's now been turned and it's accessed on the inside. So what you've done is you've got a trade-off of that sort of awkward triangle of open space on the south side of that northwest building in the previous plan. And you're trading that for a pickleball court on the north side, and the parking all kind of coming in off of one street for these apartments, really kind of focusing it on that and taking some of the traffic burden off of that northern road. So.
And then did I hear you mention setbacks? I mean, setbacks would be something that I think would be, but did I hear you, did I understand correctly that the setbacks are changing from 18 inches to 8 feet?
No, what I'm saying is, like, say the setback was originally 40 feet. We have a setback that's now 32. So it's a net reduction by 8 feet. Some of the setbacks have been reduced by 18 inches. So I don't have like every single one of them called out because they all moved just a little bit. But for instance, the southern two buildings are 8 feet closer to each other than the setback drawing we had from 2017. And then that northwest building gets closer to both the building to its west and south, as well as the building to the east, when you turn it and kind of tuck it in between those two buildings.
And so the plan that Scott comparing it against is one that was heavily reviewed by the planning commission and council. And so very specific language was included. In fact, it was partially designed that way so that someone could basically come in and say, great, we're meeting the plan, give us a building permit and approve our landscape plan. And there's just enough tweaks that it's like, well, that was so specific that we can't just, and it's kind of that accumulation again.
Yeah.
And can we ask questions to?
Yeah, Scott's still presenting. Yeah, go ahead.
So Scott, in your opinion, what has been the motivation for changing this?
Well, a large motivation for turning the building was to provide a pickleball court. 4 years ago, was anybody playing pickleball 4 years ago?
I think I was. Somebody back me up on this.
It seems like one of those things that's really come on and become popular. So in speaking to the developer, that was one comment. And then the other was this building just provides a different access for the parking. And so you kind of consolidate down into that street right of way. So you get a net increase actually in open space by doing this, as well as a new amenity that wasn't contemplated in 2017.
And the downsides?
I don't see any downsides in this one. Staff is supportive of the way this is drawn. I do want to make sure that we continue to get that major east-west trail. So in the 2017 plan, you've got this east-west trail with that center like pedestrian roundabout and a tree or something in the middle of that, and it connects to the west. The internal network of pedestrian connectivity is crucial to staff because this is where the largest density of people are going to live, and we want to make sure we're maintaining north-south as well as really good east-west connectivity to Washington Boulevard, to the future commercial that's out there, to the enhanced UTA bus stop that's now sitting out there on the other side of the car wash on Washington Boulevard. So I'm not concerned with how it's drawn. I just really want to make sure that they retain some of those key aspects that I think are going to make the project as a whole really have a better overall lifespan and be a real amenity for the city.
Thank you.
Was that all you had, Mr. Hess?
That is, yep.
Okay.
Happy to take any questions.
Okay, we've seen this movie before. Would our applicant care to address us?
Well, first of all, are there any questions I can answer?
So, yeah, let me give you some softballs. Okay.
No,
So-
I'm glad that
So I'm assuming the pickleball court's market driven. That helps. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'd rather do tennis and stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, not everyone's right. It's fine.
Don't make
So-
the guy calculate.
Yeah. And then the other adjustments is, and we've seen this before. We had another high density subdivision come in recently from John Hanson, if you guys can remember. And the things just shifted around, and we were given 18 inches here and adding 2 feet here and taking 6 feet. So what was driving the?
Well, there's a couple things. So there's the other half of the site plan that's not up here currently, but we actually caught an error in the exhibit. There were 2 buildings that were identical side by side. And I caught that. And of course, this is, you're sorting through the thing, and it was a year or two, couple of years later, I said, oh, we're gonna have to fix that. Well, this, believe it or not, started and was motivated by that. The building that we needed to swap it with is on the other, it's further down along the green belt. So in other words.
So you had 2 buildings next to each other that were the identical building. Absolutely, yeah.
So this started, and I didn't think it was a big deal, but it actually was, because both of our brokers are absolute pickleball nuts. And they said, you need to put as many in here as you can. And so this became a great spot for it. And I think Scott has said it best, that this was an awkward spot before, this green space here. It was just kind of like a waste. But anyway, there were 2 buildings down here that it turns out, I think they were like 2 A2s that were like down in here. I was like, oh man, how did we all miss that, right? But it does happen. But Rob missed, I missed it, our architect, everybody missed it. So we need to fix that, because that's not compliant. So what we did is we said, well, to do that, we need to shift things up a little bit. So it resulted in this building here, which was great because we could put the pickleball court there, which we looked at it is wherever we could put the pickleball court. It's kind of in this clubhouse area, this range. It's a nice social area. You've got the barbecue, you've got the swimming pool. What we see is, are the parents out here, the kids doing pickleball while the other parts of the family are in here. So it was kind of a triangle activity area, if you will. And that was, and then the byproduct also it did keep the parking more interior, which I like. Pedestrian safety is a big deal. Another mistake was that walkway that was left off that Scott had mentioned. That was just a mistake. We weren't trying to short any of our responsibility on pedestrian walkways. It was just a mistake. So we were fine to address that and add it back in. And candidly, as we go through this thing, hopefully we don't have any more COVID or anything like that. But as if we see mistakes as a developer, we are going to bring it up. We're not just going to sit here. And I know it creates skepticism because there's delays. I get that. I understand that. But at the same time, we have to do what's right all the way through. And if it means I'm going to take a knock in the chops for it, okay, because of another delay. But anyway, that's what drove this thing. Is that's what started the chain reaction, if you will, is catching that there was a mistake.
Well, thank you. I mean, commissioners, I think it should be noted that the last application we reviewed, that was a shift of a bunch of units. They'd already started construction.
Yeah.
And we're not here right now, right? So hats off for coming to us and asking the questions. So, okay.
I'm trying to think of anything else I can.
How about the internal walkways? Can you address that? Are they still there or?
Oh yeah, they'll be put back in. Yeah, that was a design faux pas. It was just missed. So that'll be added back in. And again, as we continually move through this, as we see things, because this is tough, guys. I mean, this is 607 units. It's a lot to manage. There's just a lot. And then of course, as you start to get tenants and residents in there, I'm the guy that takes the HOA calls from the manager. I take every one of them. I'm the first, because I want to know what's going on. So unfortunately I'm sorry that the public feels different, but I take those calls on purpose because I want to know. The lighting was a big deal. They are up and operational. Just an FYI, I just got a note from, and then, the phase 3 lights, he sent me a note and said those will be probably a couple months out, but they will be up within a couple months. So anyway, I know I'm deviating.
Thank you for noting that you take those calls.
Yeah.
I have to. I'm the developer.
No.
I mean, you know, as frustrated as we might be for the time, nobody could be more frustrated than my wife and I. I'm gonna tell you that right now. Nobody could be.
I thought we agreed to leave family out of this.
She's-
If I'm gonna
I
enforce
work-
it on the
I
public.
work
I'm
for
gonna-
her. Okay,
Okay,
I just,
all
okay, the person I work
There
for
you go.
happens to be related. But no, we couldn't be more frustrated, but at the same time, we don't quit. And, you know, we don't like not do the right thing. So, you know, that's all these changes we make or, you know, I'm not coming in for more units or, you know, less parking. You know, we'll do everything we can to, you know, find those areas of improvement as we go through. And I think Rob Scott pointed out big time, when he first did this, he said, this is the first time we've ever done an MPC. And I remember on public record, he said, and we can expect changes in the future on this thing. And some of the changes weren't even driven by me. The very first amendment was somebody in the city, I can't remember who it was, forgot some language or did something. And they said, hey, that one you just signed 3 weeks ago, we got another one. And I said, sure. And then John and I spent time, I can't remember on which one, I think it was number 4 or 5, I can't remember. And, you know, and there were give takes. It wasn't a one-sided, geez, the developer just gets his thing. It's just not the way it works. Anything else? Okay.
No, thanks. Okay, open for public comment.
Harlan Hightower, Village of Prominence Point, just a quick question. Is the pickleball court an addition to the ones that were already established? Do you know?
I was under the understanding this is a new feature. That would be my,
Well, we had pickleball courts on the maps that we had, pickleball courts and bocce ball courts. So is this an additional one is what I was wondering. Scott, do you know? Scott, are you away?
well,
I honestly don't recall.
Yeah,
I used to do a great spot for it because of the kind of the triangle. we talked
yeah,
about.
fair, good
It'd be
question.
great if it's an addition.
Yeah, that was how I was thinking,
And
but
it's an additional, okay.
I think, are we gonna get comment on that or
Well,
not?
I'm looking at the old plan and it looks like it's an additional. Yeah, I can see a pickleball court down in the southwest corner. So.
Yeah, there were
So-
pickleball and bocce ball that were by both of the clubhouses. And the
ma'am,
pools and
Before,
stuff.
it looks like you're about to go, but I have a couple questions for you before you
Oh,
go.
no.
So, okay, for this item, now you've been very vocal here tonight, okay? And yeah, again, I'd like you to know you've been heard. For this item, for the shifting of the units, and you know, you're more impacted by this than I am. Okay, I live a little further from it than you do. And, you know, do you object to these changes?
I'm trying to picture
So,
where it's at.
Well, it looks like we're spinning a unit around, so it would be entered
Is
from.
it gonna make more, okay.
Because
so where
I'm
is-
inclined, and so, you know, you have the ability to be more critical of this than probably I do. Okay, so I'm inclined to think that these changes are
It's right here.
either,
Oh,
There's the clubhouse.
oh, okay, so it's gonna be. So the clubhouse, and then you're just angling.
so the driveway comes in from the other side.
Just a wasted green belt prior, or wasted green space.
So it may not be an additional one if that's where the clubhouse is. That's the clubhouse on the corner of 300 East. And I can move around because
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Sorry, it's not very big.
I asked her this because, and maybe I better just let her comment for a second.
So this is the clubhouse we talked about today.
Yep.
This is the one that's gonna be angled now and open this up.
With the pickleball court behind
What
it,
is-
above
It'll
it.
be a pickleball added here. And then it's also showing a pickleball
I was
here.
gonna say, yeah.
And this is the original landscape concept. And the other pickleball courts were down here and here.
Mhm.
So in theory, you're getting 2 up here. I don't know.
So this one is staying and this is an additional.
Well, this is the bocce and there's, I'm not sure if that's getting moved. Because what's being shown right now is 2 pickleball courts up here. And not the bocce.
So where's the flip now?
It's this building.
Yeah, can you put that one back up?
Yep.
Sorry.
No, you're good. So it's this building is
And then
rotating
like
like this, yeah,
And then this is the clubhouse.
yeah. And these are the 2 pickleball courts. And this is. where
Oh,
that
so they're
bocce-
gonna be.
So it looks like it's one additional pickleball court.
The entire trade was we got away from the tennis courts.
Which I've never played pickleball. but I know it is.
Oh, you're gonna love it.
Super fun.
You're gonna love it.
Outdoor ping pong.
Okay,
So, yeah, that
Thank
looks
you.
like it opens things up a little nicer there, so it's not so squished next to the clubhouse, is what it appears to me.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I actually agree with you, but. Okay, do we have any other public comments?
We do have Sandy.
Okay, Sandy,
Hey, can you hear me?
we can hear you.
So we have had from the sales office here, probably 5 or 6 different maps of this development. And every one of them shows bocce ball and pickleball courts in different places every time. Some of them show one right outside my front door. Some of them don't show one anywhere near me. So it would be nice if we could have a map. Because right now you're just showing these apartments right here. There's like how many more below it? We have no idea if he's just added one, taken one away or anything, because we don't know where they all are by the information we've been given right here. Thank you.
Thank you. John, do we have any other comments?
Nope.
Okay, again, if our applicant has any final rebuttal. Okay. All right, commissioners, we have,
This one's a little more straightforward for me. So I mean, I think it's changing the aspect. It's kind of, I mean, really updating pickleball. It's much more popular now than it was a few years back. So I don't know if you want to discuss it or you want a motion.
I'm in favor of, and this always doesn't make sense to the public. I'm in favor of having a motion and then we can talk to, and there's nothing wrong with shooting down a motion, meaning,
Absolutely.
right?
Drawing.
But if we have a motion, we have something to talk to,
Discuss.
to argue for and against. So I would entertain a motion if you'd like that.
So here's the recommendation, the same as we had before, that we discuss the item, consider it, and make a recommendation to the city council regarding whether or not it meets the spirit of the development agreement. I believe this one does meet the spirit of the development agreement. It's not really substantially changing a whole lot other than the aspect and adding a few things.
And the look
in
of
my
the building.
opinion. And the look of the building.
Of a building.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
But as long as like the connectivity and the trails and everything, I think it does meet the spirit. And also to make a recommendation to the city council to approve on approval or denial of the development agreement amendment based on the current submittal. So I make a motion that we make a recommendation to the city council that we believe that this change meets the spirit of the development agreement. And also we make a recommendation to the city council to approve the development agreement amendment based on this submittal.
Can I alter your motion?
Yes.
Where this is an administrative action, if it's approved, I don't think we need to make a recommendation to the city council. I think this can be approved or denied. And then a recommendation would come in if we want legislative changes to the development agreement. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I think based on the language, this will require a legislative amendment. Because the development agreement is really specific on setbacks for this area and the buildings being located exactly where they were. But I think what you're saying is right, is that this will probably be a quicker item because the council's going to say, yeah, it makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I didn't,
Amended or?
no, I guess it's your motion. I don't want to ever put words in your mouth.
As stated?
Yeah. It's the reason I was wanting to hear, let's approve this. And the reason why is I wanted to speed up the city council's decision on it and let them chew on the bigger item, which is the increased size of that building. To me, that is something that needs some contemplation and stuff. And I see this as, just the way the nuts and bolts fall, like, hey, the building's going to shift and, this is going to twist over here and this,
Just maybe to be expected.
yeah. So I think we all agree that we're fine with these changes. And I don't think our legal counsel agrees with me here that we should approve it. So I think your motion's fine. Were you finished with it?
Could I ask that you just restate it?
Yes. Let's try this again. I make a motion that we make a recommendation to the city council that this meets the spirit of the development agreement. That was the first thing we asked for. And also that we believe it meets the spirit, and that we also make a recommendation to the city council to approve the development agreement amendment based on this submittal.
And I will, no, I guess I'll second before I.
Okay. We have a motion to second, and as stated at the beginning, we can discuss that now. There's no need to hurry and vote on that. Like, we can discuss this for as long as we need to. So.
Do I need to state that also that it meets the conditions of approval in the staff report? Or is that implied?
It doesn't hurt to just say it.
If I could also amend that motion to include that it's based on the meeting the conditions of approval listed in the staff report.
I will continue my second.
Sorry.
All right, commissioners, we have a motion to second. We have something to work towards. Any discussion?
I will go ahead and take the opportunity as everybody looked at me.
Please.
In regards to the trees, I see no issues with what has been picked. And so.
And Mr. Hess, we do have a resident arbor expert,
A landscape architect.
a landscape architect on our commission.
I'm not a licensed landscape architect, but I was.
You have to be
trained in
licensed for that?
architecture.
I've
Yes.
sold myself as a landscape architect a million times. Yeah, I'll mow your lawn. I'm a landscape architect. Huh. Okay, so, but Commissioner Lunt does have a background with his degree, correct?
Yes.
In landscape architecture. Well, thanks for your review of that.
Yeah, thanks.
That's great.
Okay. I take no issue to the motion. Again, I almost wanted to go a step further, which I don't know if it was in our power to approve it. And that was simply to streamline the process. So the city council didn't get bogged down talking about this when I think that they have a bigger fish to fry with item number 8. Okay. And I know how I feel about item number 8, and I think we've made a good recommendation to the city council. But to me, I would hope this sails through the city council, and I hope they read these minutes and understand that. That would be my only concern.
Need a vote?
So I'm ready for a vote if you guys are. Okay.
Commissioner, can I ask a question before the vote?
Please.
Is the motion on the table to approve this and recommend it be amended at the development agreement stage, or is it the same as the ILF building where it's denial because we see it needs legislative changes, but we recommend as a planning commission that the city council accept it as is?
Your first statement.
So if it's approved, and this is a John Call question, if the planning commission approves it, can the council consider it? I mean, or are they just saying or is the planning commission just saying we approve these changes within what we see as the boundary of the amount of change we can accept as the land use authority in this agreement?
I do hope we tread lightly here.
I think that the way that the development agreement is written, it's so specific on what buildings go in what locations, I think it has to be legislatively done. So this is gonna act more like a very strong recommendation for what the development agreement should be amended to in this area.
So would that essentially be tabling the item? Because we either need to, when an application comes before us, we have to approve it, deny it. Can we table an administrative item?
You can table it, yeah.
Okay, so where we're not, well,
You could in theory approve it based on the council adopting the amendment.
oh, I see. I see. Is that what your intention was?
Yeah, I mean, I would say we would approve it if we had that authority. We don't, so we're recommending approval
I see.
to the city council. Does that make sense?
I think so,
I didn't articulate it well.
No, I just wasn't very imaginative. Okay.
But I think John's statement accomplishes the same goal if you approve it with the condition that the development agreement be amended by the city council, since the authority resides there.
Yeah, and then it wouldn't have to come back for this phase of the apartments at all.
Okay.
Does my motion cover it? Do I need to restate something?
I think you're good, yeah.
Okay.
So you've essentially approved it pending approval of the changes to the development agreement. And that's been seconded by Commissioner Lund. Okay. We all clear?
Crystal.
Okay. Commissioner Lunt,
Yes.
Commissioner Webb,
Yes.
Commissioner Nancaro,
Yes.
and I vote yes. The motion passes. Thank you. Ooh. Okay, we are a couple hours into this, 3 hour plus hours. Do we have any remarks from our planning commissioners? Thank you for your time tonight, ladies and gentlemen. This was it's a big project, and you know, we've had a couple you know, emotions have been here, and I understand that when you're talking about your home and the place you love, you know, emotions are going to exist, and that's I share those same feelings. So thanks to all our comments and to our applicant tonight and the public that came earlier. Do you have any remarks from our planning director?
Nope. Thank you all for your consideration of these.
Okay, what about from our city manager and attorney?
No, I've talked too much.
Yeah, as we all have, yeah. Okay, looking for a motion to adjourn. We have a motion to adjourn from Commissioner Nancaro,
Second.
seconded by Commissioner Lunt. All in favor, voice vote.
Yes.
Aye. Any opposed?